Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this governing board meeting to order of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Before we get started, we have board members participating in person and in offices in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, there are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment, and the clerk will recognize any public attendees that have indicated they wish to speak. All right, with that, we're going to move on to the important item, which is the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Bessinger? Mr. Couch?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. McCauley?
Here.
Mr. Mendez? Dr. Pacheco Warner? Mr. Pereira?
Present.
Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Dr. Sheriff? Ms. Shuklian?
Here.
Mr. Chiesa?
I am here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. And if I could have everyone please stand, I'll ask Mayor Preciado if he'd lead us in the pledge. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we're going to move on to item 4, which is the consent calendar. It's items 14 through 18. They're routine in nature, and I'm going to ask the board, would anyone like to pull any items, comment on any items? I see none in Bakersfield or Modesto that want to say anything. Is there any public member that wants to comment on anything? Online?
I do have one online. Jazz Marie.
Jess Marie, do you want to speak on a consent item?
Can you unmute, please, Jazz Marie?
Oh, hi. I wasn't sure if this was the time to come on now, but thank you so much for allowing me a chance to speak. My name is Jasmine Latour, and I work with Little Manila Rising. I'm from Stockton, California, as well as a resident for one of the AB 617 boundaries in Stockton, and am a part of the...
Through the chair, hi, Jasmine. I'm sorry to, this is Samir, the executive director here. There is a public comment item right after the consent calendar item. You maybe just want to double check with you that you were whether you're commenting on the consent calendar or as part of the public comment period, which should follow here pretty quickly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll wait until then. Thank you.
Okay, just double checking.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Move approval for consent calendar.
Second. We have a motion and we have a second. Call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Aye.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Shuklian?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
That is perfect. We're going to move on to item 5, which is the public comment period. It's an opportunity to speak on anything that is in the subject matter jurisdiction of this board that's not on today's posted agenda. We are going to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I'm going to let Jazz Marie go first because I didn't catch it.
Jas Marie, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm glad it's the right time now. Thank you all for allowing this public comment. My name is Jas Marie Latour, and I am with Little Manila Rising in Stockton, as well as part of the air and indoor air quality and weatherization subcommittee for the AB 617 in Stockton, California. And as you know, poor outdoor air quality becomes poor indoor air quality when inadequate weatherization and improper air cleaners or filtration is not prioritized. Air purifiers reduce and mitigate poor indoor air quality in households and reduce asthma triggers for asthmatics and others with upper respiratory diseases. Indoor air purifiers have the ability to reduce exposures of PM10 and PM2.5 indoor particles to cause adverse health impacts such as asthma. And of all the census tracts within Stockton, 17 of them fall under the 95 to 100% percentile from the Callum Viral Screen 4.0 scores, which we have calculated based on statewide indicators for characterization of both pollution burden and population characteristics within our area. Stockton is also ranked number 2 for asthma rates in the state and 63rd in the nation. And so for these reasons, we are so grateful that indoor air quality is being measured here by the Air Board. And we look forward to continuing to strengthen relationships with community-based organizations during this process to continue to inform those who are a priority in our areas. And we're excited to continue to plan and explore expansion of education through community health worker lens. This is a great start, and we also need to continue to educate folks in order to combat poor air quality that contributes to poor health. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much for your comments. We will consider those under item 7. We will take those into account under item 7 because I think that's what you were speaking to. I'm going to, again, remind the public that the items for public comment are things that are not on today's posted agenda that are under our subject matter jurisdiction, and we can't comment on it, but are there any other people who want to speak during public comment?
Yes, Connie Young.
Good morning, Connie.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine.
Great. Well, I'm Connie Young, Fresno resident, retired registered nurse and volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL. Thank you, as always, for providing this opportunity for us to share for me to share what I'm learning about climate change and climate solutions, both of which are affecting and will continue to affect our air quality. Healthcare providers like to say that climate solutions are health solutions. By now, you must all be well aware that the Inflation Reduction Act contains many climate provisions that will benefit our region's economy and air quality. They are designed to hasten our country's transition to clean, renewable energy by funding the necessary research and development, infrastructure, equipment, and job training. There are benefits for businesses, municipalities, and nonprofits. But did you know how the bill will affect you personally? You can find out right now by going to a website called Rewiring America. That's Rewiring America. Then click on the button for IRA Savings Calculator. Next, all you have to do is enter 5 pieces of information: your name, zip code, income, tax filing status, and how many people are in your household. The benefits for which you may be eligible will appear right away. And what are those benefits, you ask? They're divided into rebates and tax credits, and they depend on one's income, with more benefits going to low and middle income households. There are both rebates and tax credits for heat pump heater air conditioners, heat pump water heaters, as well as for weatherization. There are rebates for electric stoves, heat pump clothes dryers, and electric wiring. Additional tax credits include new and used electric vehicles, EV chargers, and rooftop solar installation. The EVs must comply with requirements that some of their components be manufactured in North America. As you can see, many of these benefits dovetail nicely with state and local air district incentives. Imagine the savings when these incentives are combined. And just as important, imagine the impact on our air quality when more people are driving cars and living in more efficient homes powered by clean energy. That's a future I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie.
Next, we have Nahui Gonzalez Milan.
Nahui, welcome.
Hi, my name is Nahui Gonzalez Millan. I am an intern for the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, as well as a paraprofessional in a transitional kindergarten classroom here at Elementary. Today, I would like to speak a little bit about the air quality efforts that are being done in Stockton. I'm very pleased that there have been a continuous effort in trying to help filtration systems reach many households here, especially here in the southern Stockton area. Today, I would really like to put forward that there be other considerations made to expand on the eligibility of the air filtration program, in particular, either by area or through health status. The CDC states that 1 in 10 children across the United States has an asthma-related issue. However, here in Stockton, California, because of our location in the San Joaquin County, the statistic is closer to 1 in 5 children. And I have seen that statistic both in the preschool classroom that I taught in last year, and then also in the transitional kindergarten classroom that I'm in right now. However, because of our location, we are not considered a prioritized community. And I would like for people to understand that poor air quality not just affects one part of Stockton, but all parts of Stockton, and that we can consider other solutions while we help the entire Stockton community. I understand that the priority has been placed on Southern Stockton because of a variety of pollution concerns that impact that community. And I hope that in the future we can consider helping the Northern Stockton community, which is an area that continues to support low income and middle class families. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and we will take those into consideration on item number 7. Anyone else that wants to speak on anything that's not listed on today's public agenda?
We have Janet Ditzkame online.
Okay.
Thank
Good morning,
you.
Janet.
Thank you. Good morning, board members, chair, and staff. Climate change isn't just words, it's a real thing. And man-made climate change is a very scary, real thing. The rise in global temperature over the last several decades is a matter of public record. There is an overwhelming scientific consensus that it can only be explained by one thing: the rise in greenhouse gas emissions caused by human activities. Some people say that climate change is natural and we shouldn't worry. The answer is that we have indeed had naturally occurring climate change since the Earth was formed, but none of the natural causes of climate change, variation from sun's output, the tilt of the Earth, volcanic activity, or emissions from rotting vegetation can account for the warming we observe today. There is only one thing that can: the emissions from fossil fuels caused by human activities over the last 200 years. The concentrations of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere have increased by nearly 30% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Here's another inconvenient truth. Not only is global warming happening, it may be speeding up. The 20 warmest years on record have all come since 1995. The 5 warmest years have all been in this decade. And this year, Fresno had one of the hottest summers on record. It was extremely dry too. The drought we've been experiencing is very concerning. It's affecting indigenous trees and vegetation. Many of our native oak trees are dying. The environment suffered badly. Numerous species, habitats, birds, trees, and aquatic life were affected by the hot conditions and high demand for water. We need to protect wildlife and rescue fish struggling due to low river flows and low oxygen. And just as the rate of temperature rise looks to be accelerating, so too does one of the main consequences, the rise in sea level. Over the last 20 years, sea levels have risen at roughly twice the speed of the preceding 80 years. It gets worse. While the international community has pledged to avoid a rise of more than 2 degrees centigrade in the average global temperature by 2100 compared with pre-industrial levels, many scientists think that the figure will be higher. The central scientific estimate now is that by 2100, global temperature will have risen to around 3.5 centigrade. This is real. This needs immediate attention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Janet?
Are there any public comments in the Bakersfield office?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Okay, I believe we have one public comment here in Fresno office.
Yes, good morning, Manuel Cunha. This is an item that is not on the agenda, I guarantee you. But again, I'd like to introduce my Vice President of Nisei Farmers League, who will be working on air issues. Not that I'm leaving, but I wanted to introduce him, Luis Ramirez. You'll be seeing his face throughout over the next decade, I hope. And I just wanted to introduce him. Luis is the Vice President. He will be working on air.
Hello, my name is Luis Ramirez. As mentioned, Manuel mentioned, I'll be the next Vice President for Nisei Farmers League. I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to working with all the staff here. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you, Luis. Thanks, Manuel. Any other public comments here? Seeing none, we are going to close the public comment period. Going to move on to item 6, report on the District Citizens Advisory Committee activities. It's a long walk.
10,000 steps, 10,000 steps.
Good morning, again, Manuel Cunha, President of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Couple items. All of you have the document before you, in front of you. I do want to say congratulations to the board, the staff. Looks normal. So that's fantastic to see us back all in physical beings. So great, thank you. The main thing I want to mention, it's the reports before you, is that the CAC had the staff do a presentation to all the members, the new members, about parliamentary procedures, the procedures in which. And the second part of the goal by the staff was, what is your duty? What is your commitment being on the CAC, the citizens? And that part of it was very important part of, and we're going to have a meeting, one of our CAC meetings will have an hour. We're going to talk about what different CAC members are doing, so others can go out and get the information out to the people, because that's what the CAC is for, between the 3 different types of groups. So also, we had our first full meeting, the CAC, all of the outreach by the members have recruited new members. And so the CAC looks really good on attendance in all of the different areas, from environmental, the city, and the business side. So again, I want to thank the staff though for helping getting that coordinated with all of the different members of the CAC. So that's a great accomplishment. Again, one of the things that was highlighted, I think, which was important, was the award in which you received, Samir, your entire team, and I think that award was great. EJAG was a part of the discussion. Also, 617, a lot of information has been going on with the 4 areas in which is happening, and the latest down south in Kern County, in Arvin, Lamont. All of those items and people talking and communicating rather than doing hatchet jobs or whatever it is. So I want to thank all of the 617 activity that's been going on and working with the staff. The SIP, major discussions on the SIP of what's happening. Also discussion on the new NAC standards that's happening by the EPA. So again, if there's any questions by the board, be happy to answer. If not, again, I want to thank you, and I appreciate the staff going to a full back of seats and chairs. When I came in here, I couldn't believe it. I thought the clock had fallen backwards or something, or that I had gone up above and I was looking back, you know. So and it wasn't above, so I know it was real. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your service, Emmanuel. Appreciate it. Making a difference. Everyone making a difference. Okay, seeing no more comments on that. Did any board member want to comment, Emmanuel? All right, we're moving on to item 7, and this is the approve the project plan and relocate community air protection funding for new residential air filtration program. And we had a couple speakers that have already given us some of their thoughts on it, but now we're going to present it first.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the Air District. And as mentioned, we are here today to consider really a new program for deploying residential air filtration units in the AB 617 selected communities of South Central Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton, and to do some reallocation within the already allocated funding for these communities to support these new programs. So providing space for meaningful community engagement has really always been a top priority for your board, to allow community members to really engage and have input on the development of district air quality strategies. Some recent examples of that, or just ongoing examples, are your board's adopted environmental justice strategy. We have an environmental justice advisory group that meets regularly here at the district, and as well as really the past 5 years, focusing a lot of our community engagement efforts on AB 617, the Community Air Protection Program, which I'll go into a few more details in later in the slides. So we've invested a lot of additional community-focused resources, certainly in the past few years, to support these local engagement efforts and really uplift community voices, especially for those that are disproportionately impacted by economic and environmental inequities. We want to forge new partnerships, work with existing groups and groups that maybe haven't engaged with the district, and really leverage clean air opportunities and help provide clean air to the communities that need it the most. This is this slide just shows an example of a lot of the community engagement efforts we've been doing. These are all recent examples in the past year of ways that we've forged those partnerships. And we work at community schools, work with residents to get a variety of different materials to schools and to parents in a variety of different languages to make sure folks know how to protect their families. You can see here a couple of slides here in the upper right-hand corner and the lower left-hand corner. We work with residents and community organizations to build capacity for their organizations, as well as to just support a lot of the outreach that we are doing. We lean and work with community organizations to do our outreach, and that's certainly important in the program that we're going to talk about a little bit today. And then you can see we have been giving incentives directly to residents, and that's definitely a part of the program we're going to discuss today, as well as working with communities to capacity build and really make sure they feel that they're involved in a lot of the development and strategy work that we've been doing across the district. As an example, we have AB 617 that we've been implementing the past few years. And AB 617 is an assembly bill that requires the California Air Resources Board each year since 2018 to consider selecting or selection of communities across the state for focused community air protection program resources to develop clean community air monitoring programs, as well as something we call CERP, so community emissions reduction programs. And so since that time, since 2018, the Valley has had 4 communities that have been nominated by your board and then selected by CARB for implementation of this program. And you can see here across the bottom, each one of the communities have been selected in different rounds of selection. Each one of them has a board-adopted and CARB-approved Community Emissions Reduction Program, or CERP. Each one of these CERPs is developed with the residents and businesses and agencies and organizations within each of these communities. And you can see here, they're all different. They all have a different variety of measures that reduce emissions and reduce exposure in each of the communities. And you can see here the number of measures and the target reductions are different in each community. It really just reflects the uniqueness of each community here. And so part of the work that we've been doing, especially in the past year of developing relationships with community organizations, have been beyond AB 617. And one really good example of that is the success of the Clean Air Rooms pilot program we did last summer. So the recent and sort of increasing severe wildfire smoke impacts we've had over the past few years has really led the district to have a wildfire smoke impact outreach program. And that part of that program is where the district encourages folks to use air filtration devices to create clean air rooms within their homes. This ensures safe indoor air quality, and especially during those smoke events is really, really important. And so in June, we launched the Clean Air Rooms pilot program, which provided free off-the-shelf residential air filtration devices and an extra filter to residents living within any disadvantaged community within the Valley. And we really partnered and developed relationships with local organizations to help us launch this program. We spread the word very quickly and very quickly spent the $250,000 of that pilot program to get over 1,200 devices deployed to the most vulnerable populations in the Valley. This slide is just to show you where we've spent all that funding. And as you might recall, the way we kind of allocated the funding was just proportional to each county's sort of ratio of population with respect to the rest of the Valley. And so you can just see here, we were able to really target a lot of folks and get residential air filtration devices before the end of the summer last year. We were fortunate we didn't have a lot of wildfire smoke impacts compared to years previously, but we know that these folks are set up for the next few years. So with that success and really building on those partnerships, those same organizations, many of them work with us on AB 617. There has been an ongoing interest in Clean Air Rooms programs, but certainly I would say this renewed and reinvigorated interest among AB 617 communities to do something similar. So these community steering committees, who have been meeting monthly since each of them have been established, in South Central Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton, each have supported the launch of a new focused residential air filtration program. And so today we're going to discuss just a few details of the proposed program. And in some cases, if they were not a part of the original adopted CERP, there's a need to refocus some of our community air protection resources or funding to support these new measures. So just a little bit of background, but really it's pretty much mirroring our pilot program. We intend to provide free off-the-shelf residential air filtration devices and an extra filter to eligible residents living within the boundaries of these communities, these 3 Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton 617 communities. These devices, again, just like our pilot program, and we learned a lot from that, must be certified by CARB. They're going to be high efficiency particulate air filters. So the goal is to filter out not ozone, which can be a type of device, but really filter out the smoke particulate matter. And of course, they'll meet a set of minimum requirements, including minimum energy efficiency and of course, filtration efficiency. And you heard a little bit already from some folks today who have been involved in this program with us. Each of the community steering committees has worked with us on sort of what they feel for their community is the best way to select participants and do some targeted outreach. But the baseline for all of this certainly is that eligible participants at least must reside within the respective community boundaries. And we have, based on some input, wrote within the project plan, single-family residents, as well as in-home daycare facilities and private preschools. And that's been a focused target of a few of our communities. This would be 1 device per household. And we've already committed to, and we look forward to, as was mentioned in earlier comments, partnering with community partners to focus outreach on those that maybe need it the most within these disadvantaged communities, so low-income residents, perhaps those with respiratory illnesses. And as I mentioned earlier, it would be free of charge and it would include an extra filter. We have a couple of distribution options. And the reason we call these options is because, once again, these are unique communities, and each one of the communities might want to go down a different path. And we're working with each one of them to operate these slightly differently. But primarily, the way we did our successful pilot program was to ship air filtration devices and filters directly to the residents, which worked really well for getting things very quickly to community members, especially given that we launched it in the middle of summer. And that's certainly one of the options we want to provide community members throughout this new established program as well. We also look forward to partnering with community organizations who have already provided a lot of great input on this to do distribution events, which we've learned through our distribution events of electric lawnmowers, and I know a few of you have been to those with us. It's not just a great way to get things to folks, but to also get our other messages out there about all of the other great programs we have. And so that's some of the work that we want to do once we launch this program and get approval from CARB to partner with organizations and start planning these events. There we go. So there's a couple of different differences between each of these that I want to outline for you. The first is that Stockton actually already included this in their SERP that your board adopted and CARB approved. We already have an allocation for $1 million, so there's no funding reallocation necessary. In South Central Fresno, the measure was not included in the original board approved SERP. So CSC members, really eager to make sure that there was funding for this program, have supported and worked with the district to understand kind of needs and other parts or other measures within the SERP, and have supported reallocating up to $1 million from the locomotive replacement measure for this new measure. And this would be similar to something that we've done a few months ago with another reallocation to support urban greening in that community. And then in Shafter, the measure was also not included in the board adopted SERP. And we have actually two different areas within the current SERP that we're looking to reallocate funding from. One is also from a locomotive replacement measure, and I'll explain a little bit about kind of the challenges we've seen with that on the next slide. And the other is from the school air filtration measure. So just a little bit of what that funding reallocation looks like and sort of the reasoning behind shifting from the measures that we're proposing today. The district and CSC identified funding from these two measures because they were no longer either supported or not moving as expected. And we are on a tight timeline to spend these funds. And so we're really looking to spend the funds in a way that makes sense for the community and makes sense for funding deadlines. This would not be a proposed change at all in the overall SERP funding allocation. So in the Shafter area, with an influx of pandemic relief funding, and we found this actually across a few communities, the schools are no longer in need of the funding to support improved air filtration. They've been successful in sort of using their funds, and we've worked with the schools the past few years to understand that funding support. And so this proposed reallocation would just refocus all of the funding that was originally intended for that measure to the indoor air filtration measure, really a very similar type measure, right? Protecting folks inside. Similarly, and we discussed this actually with your board last month as well, we worked to identify potential locomotive replacement projects both in Fresno and in Shafter for the past several years, and we have not received interest. And so these proposed funding reallocations would still leave funding within these measures should we still find willing and interested project partners. So just to summarize, I know this is not a complicated table. It's the same amount of funding for all three, and which would be yield the same number of estimated devices for all three. The only difference is that in Stockton, it is not a reallocation. This is already in the SERP, and so we're just, for that particular community, just proposing this new program. Just a quick little background because it's important for our next steps. Any AB 617 proposed funding that is not in the adopted community air protection incentive guidelines, which generally include things like the Carl Moyer program, actually have to go through a process to develop what we call project plans. And those project plans have to be approved by CARB before we can spend the funding. So the residential air filtration program today was not in that pre-approval, so it's not in the guidelines. We did submit a project plan. We expect any day now for that to be approved. We've been in contact with CARB and have been working back and forth with them. And so we hope that upon approval, we can launch this program with your board's approval. So briefly, next steps are approval would authorize the district to launch the program once CARB also approves the project plan. We anticipate that, like I said, just really very hopefully less than the coming weeks, maybe in the coming days. We will, of course, work closely with community steering committees and partner organizations to begin that targeted outreach I discussed. And we also want to pursue opportunities for additional valley-wide program expansion. And you heard that again a little bit in the comments earlier. Really building on the successful program that we had last summer, valley-wide for disadvantaged communities. So you can see the recommendations here today are to approve the project plan as established, to reallocate the funding in Fresno and in Shafter to support, and then to authorize the executive director to make any administrative changes as necessary. And with that, thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Jessica, thank you very much. And I always have to say that one of the most impressive things about this organization since I've joined is seeing staff recommendations come, and we're continually changing what works best, right? It's all fact-based, it's measured, and we're trying to get the best bang for our buck and reallocating money from locomotive to something that can be utilized today. And if there's a locomotive that can be replaced, we'll find the funding, and we continue to move it around. So I do appreciate that. Comments to the board, Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you for that proposal, and certainly second those comments in terms of the flexibility in adjusting and responding to the changing sense of priorities in the communities, which is so important. So appreciate that. How long do we expect these devices to work? Clearly, this is important health impact for individuals, and particularly sensitive individuals. I think it's obvious we're not getting the air quality impacts that we'd like to see, but nonetheless, important health impacts in the communities through this. So worth emphasizing, but wondering how long do these devices, are they expected to work? And is there any process for, well, what's going on a year or two now in terms of the devices, the effectiveness of the program, as far as that goes, and wondering how long the filters last, what they cost, and partly that's relevant to the follow-up is what goes on there. I've got something else, but go ahead.
The filters themselves, we hope that they, well, certainly, and for those of you that might have indoor air filtration devices themselves, certainly as wildfire impacts increase, they might not last as long. But usually they recommend 3 to 6 months to change out the filter. But the device themselves costs about $200, and that includes the replacement filter. So that's the cost that we're looking at now. I believe the filter is somewhere around the $20 range. I don't know, Janine Tackett, who is a supervisor in our incentives team, is the one who runs this program and might have more information about kind of the timing.
Thank you, Jessica. Hello, Janine Tackett, supervising specialist in grants. The filters on average, of course, we don't know exactly which devices we'll be partnering with, but what we saw in the pilot program is somewhere between $15 to $30, depending on the brand, the manufacturer. Excuse me, wasn't expecting to speak today. Probably should have had a little water with me. Most of the devices have, on average, about a 1-year replacement requirement. Thank you. For the filters. So while we're going to be doing a request for quotations to select vendors, one of the things we'll be looking at is how long they can go, that interval between replacing filters, and try to select devices that can go the longest amount of time. So we're hopeful that the initial filter that comes with the device is the first year, and then that replacement filter will satisfy the second year. And was there another question there that maybe I didn't address?
I don't think he's gotten to it yet.
Okay.
Here it comes.
Just in terms of, is there any mechanism in terms of following up? How are they being used in a year or two? If people found the maintenance is too difficult, so they're not using them, or they, like I would do, the filters in there for 5 years and probably not working?
Yeah, we would have a lot of information about, who is participating in the program and all that. So I think follow-up is going to be important. I think the steering committee is going to be interested in that. And there's also been some health related questions that we've asked, like through the pilot program, that we hope is informative as well, so that we have a better understanding of the family situation or the home situation with a filter. What conditions maybe a particular household is experiencing, whether any benefits. I think there's a number of questions that probably do make sense for maybe some follow up, so we can kind of use that to help with program implementation as we move forward.
Good. And one comment, a lot of the money for this is coming from potential locomotive work. And in fact, the locomotive, as far as criteria pollutants go, is a pretty cost effective, but it's a big capital, big project, difficult to pull off. I hope this doesn't mean that the staff is not continuing to focus on that. And again, particularly affects many of these communities because of where they are.
I just wanted to mention for the board's benefit, Dr. Sheriff had a great point, kind of a question embedded there on the locomotive side. Just want to reassure the board that one of our higher priorities right now is trying to find productive ways of engaging with short haul, the bigger kind of class 1 rail companies on deploying the latest technology within the locomotive fleet. So we're definitely working on that. Very high priority. It's a valley-wide priority. We're looking at new federal funds as another potential opportunity if we can couple these projects together. So just rest assured on that front that we're absolutely working on that. And there is some funding left in the CERT, but also in addition to that, if we can keep bringing other, especially new resources in as we identify those projects, it's something that is definitely a major opportunity for us in the Valley. So just want to reassure the board that's definitely a priority for us.
Thank you. Member Robinson?
I just want to kind of echo what's been. There we go. I think we're on now. I just want to echo what's been said and basically show my appreciation for the results-oriented kind of approach. The time management is huge. You're looking at the money, you're seeing how long we have left, and you're seeing what we can do with it. So that reallocation to me is a big deal because I don't see that feature enough in government agencies, and so kudos.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. Maybe you hit it and it just kind of passed my brain, but on the Clean Air Rooms pilot program, we had all the counties that are within our jurisdiction that received some devices and the cost of funding that. Moving forward with reallocating the monies, are we going to include getting devices to counties that are not AB 617? And if so, how does that distribution work? Are there agencies that work with you to make sure that you're hitting the targeted areas for people who need them?
I'll take a stab at that, and then Jess, if you have anything else to add, feel free to add or correct if I miss anything on that. But so the intention right now is to actually develop and come back to your board with a valley-wide program. And so this is focused on the state funding that's only available for these specific communities. But there, as was mentioned in the next steps portion of the presentation, there is an interest and we will be returning to your board with a valley-wide another round of it. We had the round last year. The distribution model that we used last year was a direct to resident model. And so what we did was we created a portal where residents that anywhere throughout the Valley, if you're within a disadvantaged community, you could express your interest in receiving one of these. We partnered with a vendor in that case. Through a very efficient process, you basically you applied. You also provided some information about your household related to demographics and health conditions and some other information, and you received a free air filtration device just direct to your house, and it was available. We spent all the money as was reported with the presentation. We want to build on that, and if there's some other efficiencies and enhancements that we could provide, and we also relied heavily on local community outreach. So information was made available. Board members are great and make sure the word got out. Community organizations were involved in making sure social media and other aspects were used to spread the word. That was a pilot. So we want to actually do a bigger Valley-wide program actually. And we'll rely on the board to help as you've done. You're a great example of tremendous outreach within not just your city, but within Merced County as a whole. you know, we want to make sure we get the word out about that. That's something that's coming back to the board. This particular recommendation is focused on the 617 funding, but as was expressed, we definitely want to come back with a valley-wide program. We're going through the budget process right now too, the spending plan. So we actually are looking for funding for that right now. And it is something that we have strong interest in recommending to the board.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. I see no more board member comments. Is there any public comment?
Yes, online we have Kevin Hamilton.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, members of the board, Mr. Chair, staff. This is an amazing program. This is Kevin Hamilton. I'm the Executive Director of Central California Asthma Collaborative. My co-executive director, Tim Tyner, and I really love this program. What you may not know is during this last year, or rather at the beginning of 2022, the Department of Healthcare Services added a suite of benefits for asthmatics on Medi-Cal who met certain criteria across the state of California. One of those benefits is providing these air filters. CCAC is contracted with all the Medi-Cal plans in the San Joaquin Valley, from San Joaquin County all the way down to Kern, and has met with the Air District now, and I expect that we're moving forward together to figure out how we can more actively join these two programs. In Kern County alone, there were 22,000 families in one Medi-Cal plan that qualified for this program, and which would have qualified them to receive at least one of these air filtration units in their home. We are using the same air filtration units the Air District's using, and use the same methods to certify ours. Their free benefit is part of the family's Medi-Cal benefit. I think everybody here understands the percentages, high percentages of folks living in these disadvantaged communities who are on Medi-Cal. If you don't need more information, please feel free to contact me or have someone from staff, and we can provide that information. We see an opportunity to collaborate here and to somewhat defray the costs that the district would experience in trying to manage the entire valley with this, and an up and running team of community health workers who are already working in these communities talking about these air filters and air purification units. When we provide these units, we provide filter changes essentially for life. We give them 3 filters right off the bat, and we show them how to use the device, help them set it up in the room that's appropriate. If they have members, more than one member in the household that qualifies, we'll give them a second or a third air purifier for that home, so they can have one in the bedroom of, say, the child, and one in the common living space. So we think these two programs working together could be more efficient, would certainly be more efficient. And again, there's a number of folks who would qualify, though, who don't have asthma, who need these filters just as desperately. So I think together we could walk forward and really create massive numbers of folks who can suddenly find a safe place to breathe inside their home during a wildfire event. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kevin.
Next, we have Janet Ditzkame.
Thank you. I thank you for this program. This is very, very important. As someone who has asthma, I depend upon air purification filtered devices. I even have them in my cars. I have them in every room and in my cars. And those people who do not live in a home such as mine, where I have an HVAC system, I can protect myself with air conditioning, and don't have the sealed home that I have, the outside air can seep into their homes. These things are very important. Now, I've had mine for 5 years with no problem, but I do change my filters quite frequently. They last about 6 months in my home where it is sealed, and I can better control the amount of polluted air that comes in. Someone who lives in a home that is not as sealed may have to change the filter more than that. During wildfire episodes, I have to change my HVAC filter and my air purifying filters more than 6 months. And I have different types, different brands of air purifiers. All of them have worked well. This is a wonderful program. I also want to say that Clovis Unified School has outstanding air purification systems in their classrooms. And the other school districts could learn from what Clovis put into their classrooms. They are really outstanding. Children spend a lot of their time in their schools, and having clean air that is purified well is imperative. I'm so happy about this program, and I'm happy to hear I share Chair Lewis, Board Member Lewis, her comments regarding expanding outside of the 617 communities, because there are a lot of people who need this help, who are 6-7, wonderful. We identified an area that is very much in need, but it goes beyond there. And I'm so happy to learn that that will be considered in future. And Kevin Hamilton's information is outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Janet?
Okay, next we have Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Cynthia, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, policy coordinator with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, or CVAC. Thanks for the opportunity to come in and for expanding this project. And CVAC has been involved in the Stockton AB 617 process since the beginning, and has provided some support for the other two community steering committees in Fresno and Shafter, and we've co-facilitated and supported the indoor air subcommittee. We definitely support the expansion of the program. Providing air filters for impacted communities and helping create that safe space to breathe is extremely important for Valley residents. And as Valley Air considers expanding this program in other AB 617 communities, we definitely encourage the Valley Air to really think about adequately compensating any community organizations or groups or anybody that they're going to be collaborating with to get those filters out, these programs, to make sure that they're distributed in an equitable way. And relationships with communities are so valuable. So we definitely believe that any groups, whether they be CBOs, church groups, anybody that's going to be working with Valley Air, that be adequately compensated. And it's overall extremely encouraging to see Valley Air take this action to expand important health protective measures. And with the great success of the pilot program, like Jessica was mentioning, we definitely also support what Board Member Lewis was saying and other folks were saying to expand the program region-wide. As other commenters have mentioned, air pollution is not only impacting us within those AB 617 boundaries. There's many folks who don't have access to the program who would significantly benefit from being able to create that safe space in their home. So definitely in support of that potential to expand the program. It's extremely important to continue to create these health protective efforts and in an equitable way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Cynthia?
Next we have Nayamine Martinez.
Thank you. Buenos dias. Good morning. Nayamine Martinez, Executive Director with the Central California Environmental Justice Network, or CCJN. I thank you for your time and the opportunity to make these comments. Beyond representing CCJN today, I am also here as a member of the Fresno AB 617 Steering Committee. I'm here to strongly support the recommendation made by the staff to reallocate this funding. As a member of the Steering Committee since its inception, I've seen the need for its expansion so that we not only improve the air quality in schools, but most importantly in the residents that live in this area. It has been problematic, to tell you the truth, to get school districts, including Fresno, to work with their district to improve their filtration system. We will continue working, but in the meantime, I think it's imperative to make these air filters or air filtration devices available for homes that do not have proper insulation, as Janet mentioned. But I would like to highlight the importance of expanding this to other non-AB 617 communities. I've been working with residents in rural areas in Tulare, Kings, and Fresno counties, where they have expressed that they were in line to receive the air purifier that was given last year, but the program was oversubscribed, so they were not able to receive it. I just had a meeting in Cantua Creek yesterday where one resident who has multiple chronic diseases was very disillusioned because she did not receive an air purifier. The same happened in Terravela, and the list goes on and on. So this is just to highlight that while this is an extremely important first step to reallocate this funding, is not enough. And I look forward to working with the Air District and to make sure that whenever this new pilot is presented to you, that we come back and also strongly support this. Thank you for your time.
Naimeen, thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, next we have Margot Prouse.
Welcome, Margot.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Margot Prouse. I live within the AB 617 boundaries in Stockton, and I'm a member of the Stockton Community Steering Committee. We're so pleased that this proposal is coming before you today and moving along, and we hope you'll approve this plan to implement an air filtration system. We all know that in the valley, our air quality is some of the worst in the nation, and on days when it's particularly bad and during wildfires, the recommendation is that sensitive individuals stay indoors, and that's where these air filters can make such a difference. As a retired RN, I'm a firm believer in breathing, as I think most of us in this gathering today are. And I'm looking forward to the time when our outdoor air is so much cleaner than it is currently. I appreciate that you are not losing sight of the big projects such as the locomotives. And when that is a possibility, we want to see that move forward as well. On behalf of our Stockton residents who will qualify, I ask that you approve this plan to implement the air filtration program, because we know that clean indoor air is so important for health. Thank you.
Next, we have Michelle McManus.
Hi, this is Michelle McManus from the CSC chapter AB 617. I wanted to thank you for looking at the air filtration program, reallocating the funds. I support that we reallocate these funds. It'd be a great benefit to everybody that lives in our community. We're very excited in the chapter program to facilitate this and get this moving. So we appreciate you looking at it, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Michelle.
Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. And I am going to bring it back to the board. We do have some speakers, but it's always nice when we fall on an item where everyone agrees, appears to agree. That is fantastic. Member Preciado.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to make a recommendation, also comment. I believe that maybe those posters that the Air District have been putting out in disadvantaged communities everywhere, they really target everybody, because people do go to grocery stores locally, and sometimes during the day they're working, but at the end of the day they go to the grocery store on weekends. So I think that will be a very good way to reach out to community members once it hopefully will expand it to outside the boundaries. But also my question is like to define those boundaries for those AB 17 communities. That will be a good way to reach out to everybody, not just, because sometimes it is difficult to know that you're within the boundaries lines. So I think those posters emphasizing with propaganda, but apply for free air purifiers for your room, I think that will catch their attention quickly and will reach out to a lot of people. Thank you.
Perfect. Member Robinson?
This is a rescue inhaler. This is also not a setup. I carry this with me all the time. So I have asthma. So any efforts that you can do to improve that like this are welcome. So thank you.
Perfect. Dr. Sheriff?
Let's not duplicate, let's collaborate. Thanks to Kevin Hamilton for his comments and bringing up, that project. There's so much that we can do together, obviously, and want to do together. Both in terms of, we can reach different groups and reach many more people through that. And it's another opportunity to do a more thoughtful and complete job in terms of measuring what the outcomes are, and collaborating on that as well, particularly as we look at this is, in a sense, it's not another pilot, but it's a step forward to trying to be part of getting this out to the entire Central Valley. And again, I think measuring the impact, measuring what happens with these machines, which households are signing up will be very helpful. So, thank you.
Thank you. Member Shucklian?
Yes, I'm in full support of this. I have 2 air purifiers in my home, and this prompted me to turn on my app and see that my living room was in poor air quality condition. So I'm glad I'm not there right now. But I bumped it up to turbo, which you can do through the app, and it's now in fair condition. So hopefully by the time I get home, it'll be in good condition. But just when we were talking about the maintenance and whatnot, hopefully these are, with technology nowadays, these are kinds that you can tap into wireless. It will alert you when your filters need to be changed, and or as I do, vacuum them now and then to just kind of, being the Armenian in me, just vacuum it now and then, and it may last longer. So I am in full support of this.
Thank you.
Jamie, I'm seeing a new video for public outreach. Supervisor, clean air filter. YouTube.
Member McCauley?
Yeah, I got a message from Supervisor Wheeler. Actually, he said you can turn your home fan into an air purifier by just a roll of duct tape and that air filter, just tape it on the back. So
who's this Wheeler guy you sneak up?
This Wheeler guy, he was that guy in a funny costume back in December. So I just wanted to say thanks to Dr. Sheriffs on his comments. Don't duplicate. And I am curious to know, and without getting too far off track from this item, if we are going to move forward with that pilot program, if there's any opportunity to collaborate with our county public health officers and Department of Social Services, I think it'd be a great way to reach that target population. So just wanted to make those comments. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's absolutely, we're jotting down that as part of our approach for, moving forward. Not only actually, even with the 617 programs as well, as we launch these, but also valley-wide. Great ideas. Appreciate the comments from Kevin, and just definitely want to take advantage of those other opportunities as well.
Vice Chair Lewis?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I keep forgetting.
She's working on it.
I keep forgetting because at our city council, the chair controls the microphone, so I keep forgetting to turn it on. Anyway, thank you, staff, for the presentation. All the comments were wonderful, and if there are no other comments from our board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve project plan and reallocation community air project funding for a new residential air filter program within the AB 617 communities of South Central, Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the 4 staff recommendations. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Julian?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Very good. And Jessica, thank you. And Janine, appreciate you coming up. You always hate to see people gasp when you start asking questions, and Samir's calling you up, huh? Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8, receive an update on the district's agricultural open burn phase out strategy.
All right, thank you, Chair. Members of the board, I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning, and I'm joined by Todd DeYoung, Director of Grants and Incentives, and we're going to give you an update on our open burning phase out strategy and our Ag Burn Alternatives grant program. So just a little bit of background on our efforts so far. We have the toughest restrictions here in the Valley on ag burning throughout the state. We're the only region with an ag burn phase out strategy that we implemented. Since 2005, over about a 20-year period, we've implemented prohibitions over these years that have significantly reduced open ag burning. And this is enforced through our local rule 4103 open burning. And your board has continued to prioritize efforts to find different alternatives to open burning. And this is all included in our final phase out strategy. That was a big effort in 2021, just a few years ago. A little bit of background on our phase out strategy. As I mentioned, this was developed in 2021, and in June 2021, your board adopted and CARB approved this final phase out requirements for ag open burning. This established a near complete phase out date of January 1st, 2025, which is coming up soon, just less than 2 years from now. It set out a phase out schedule for different crop types, maximizing the amount of tonnage of material to no longer be open burn as early as possible, looking at different alternatives, different crop types to develop the schedule. Smaller ag operations were given more time and more flexibility as the schedule was implemented. And we saw the need for significant incentives to cover the cost of this transition. This is why we developed our incentive program that Todd will give you an overview of in just a few slides here. So we're continuing to develop and implement this phase out strategy, enforcing it over the past few years. And there's been a lot of outreach over the past few years to help growers understand what's coming up and the incentive program resources that are available. So what progress have we seen so far in this phase out strategy? So I'll show a slide here just after this one that shows what we've seen in the past couple of years in our trends, but just wanted to note here that looking back in time in the past, we used to have over 1 million tons of material open burned in the Valley each year. And this has come down over time. In 2021, when our phase out strategy came into play, when it was approved, we saw about 480,000 tons of material open burned. Last year, we saw that decrease sharply, where we had only 125,000 tons of material open burn, and this was actually a new record low for the Valley, which is great to see this huge improvement and reduction already. We expect to continue to see these decreased numbers going into 2023, this year, and 24 as we get closer to that January 1st, 2025 date. So showing this on a chart, what I was talking about, if you look in the past on the left-hand side of this chart, you see those years about 20 years ago, the year 2000, 2001, you can see a number of years where the total number of tons of material was over 1 million tons Valley-wide that was open burned. You can see that progression go down as the phase out was implemented for different crop types. And then you see a low period there in 2011, 2012, 2013, then the drought hit us. And so that combined with biomass facility closures, you can see those numbers start going up again. But now, if you look at that highlighted box there, with the past few years, you can see where once we launched our alternatives grant program, our phase out strategy came into place. We're now seeing those numbers come back down, and you can see that sharp decrease from 2021 to 2022, which is excellent to see. 2023, we're very early in the year, so you see a very small amount there. One of the reasons why we're seeing this sharp decrease, if you look on the chart just to the right of there, we're seeing a huge increase in the amount of tons of material going through our alternatives program, where instead of being open burn, it's being chipped, incorporated into soil. You can see that ramp up significantly over the past few years, coupled with our decrease in open ag burning. So this incentive program is going a long way to help us reach our phase out goals. Just wanted to note here too that over the next couple of years, there are some milestone dates coming up. that are part of the phase-out strategy for vineyard removals, orchard removals, and surface harvested prunings. You see a few dates there, January 1st and January 1st of 2024, 2025 coming up soon that will continue to phase out open burning. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Todd, who's going to give us an update on our grant program and some recommendations for enhancements.
Thank you, John. And good morning once again. My name is Todd DeYoung, your board's Director of Grants and Incentives. To really support the phase-out strategy and all the information that John just provided, back in 2018, your board authorized the creation and the development of this new Ag Burn Alternatives Grant Program. This program provides financial incentives or grants and incentive funding for growers to chip ag material rather than burning it, primarily for soil reincorporation, land application, and what we call off-site beneficial reuse. And I'll go through what that means in later slides. During the early years of the program, from 2018 through 2021, over $25 million was invested in local funding to support the emerging alternatives that are part of this program. In August of 2021, through strong advocacy from this board and from partnerships with the agricultural industry, the district had received $178,200,000 in additional state funding to support this program. And it was really twofold. It was to support the program and the alternatives to agricultural open burning, and to make sure that there was enough equipment and capacity out there to accommodate the increase in these alternatives. And we'll go through that in a couple of slides. One of the main tenets of this program, and your board has been very, very supportive of this and very vocal, is that we have to make sure that smaller growers have equitable access to this funding, and that it all doesn't go to the larger growers. That there are costs that are borne by these smaller growers that are different economically speaking than these larger growers, and your board has been very supportive of ensuring that the smaller ag operations have equitable access to this funding. So we, after we received the funding in August of 2021, we immediately turned around and launched our updated program on September 1st of 2021, utilizing these new state resources. Again, there was a significant focus on assisting the small growers, which I'll go through in just a moment. The enhanced program has been critical to supporting this new transition to these alternatives. And again, like I said, including increasing the availability of this chipping equipment and the capacity to make sure that everybody wants to use these alternatives has the means to do so. Since inception, we've supported alternative practices at more than 162,000 acres of orchard and vineyard removals throughout the valley. This represents more than 4.5 million tons of agricultural waste and has resulted in almost 9,000 tons of NOx reductions, over 16,000 tons of PM reductions, and almost 14,000 tons of VOCs, or volatile organic compound reductions. Since we relaunched the program with $178 million, $110 million of that has already been provided as funding support for these alternative practices and for the increased capacity for chipping equipment throughout the valley. And this just kind of breaks down where the funding has gone so far and what our progress is towards allocating it to the valley. New equipment purchases, your board allocated $30 million of that total for new equipment purchases to expand capacity throughout the valley for these alternative practices. And then the balance of that funding is going to the actual alternative practices that are available. As you can see, we've spent almost all of the equipment funding and we've deployed the equipment. I'll show you a slide coming up that kind of details that a little bit more. And then we made significant progress on allocating the funding for the actual alternative practices. We've got about $57 million left in total. And so this slide just shows the participation basically by crop type since we started the program. Overwhelmingly, it's been almond orchard removals, followed by vineyard removals, and then from there, the balance is represented by these different crop types. And so in terms of the methods of material disposition, when we first started the program, we had soil incorporation and land application as the two opportunities. When we relaunched the program, we coined a term called offsite beneficial reuse. We really wanted to see what innovation was out there. How can we use this material if we're not going to reincorporate it, if it's not effective or efficient to reincorporate it into the soil? What else can we do with this material that provides a beneficial reuse of that material? And we've seen a significant uptick in what those beneficial reuses are. Still overwhelmingly, soil incorporation is the method of choice. Which is great. That material is reinvested into the soil and reincorporated. But we have seen some offsite beneficial reuse. Just a couple of examples on the bottom of this slide include some of this material being used for calf bedding. And we're seeing a lot of this material being used for dust suppression along roadways and on fields itself. So they're applying this on the land for dust suppression. We've seen this material being shipped off-site and used to produce decking material after it's been further processed. So we're seeing some real innovative uses for this material beyond the soil incorporation and land application. As I mentioned earlier, it's been your board's desire to ensure that the funding is available in an equitable manner to smaller farms. So since December 2020, your board has directed that about 30% of the available funding at least is initially set aside for these smaller ag operations, less than 500 acres in size. And as you can see, we're right about there at 28% right now, and we're keeping a very close eye on that. And we're going to make sure that we meet that 30% goal, and some of the recommendations we have for you today will ensure that we actually meet or exceed that goal of providing that 30% funding to those smaller ag operations. In August of 2021, your board went an additional step, and we allocated an additional $100 per acre, an adder, on top of the existing funding for the smallest of the small ag operations, those that are the least likely to be able to afford some of these fixed costs that we see in the program. And so in August of 2021, your board approved that additional $100 per acre adder on top of the standard grant amounts. And as you can see, that's represented, since we started tracking farm size, it's about 22% of the total projects that we've received are from those farms of less than 100 acres in size in total in the San Joaquin Valley. As we talked about earlier, one of the main tenets of the program is to ensure that we have capacity. Anybody that wants to use one of these alternative practices has the means to do so, and that there's equipment available and there are contractors available to actually do this work in an expeditious manner. So your board allocated that $30 million out of the new state funding to go towards chipping and grinding equipment purchases within the program. Since we relaunched the program in September of 2021, we've seen significant interest in contractors wanting to purchase additional equipment and then provide that equipment to Valley Ag operations. We've funded 55 pieces of equipment to date. You can see some examples of the equipment that we funded there on the bottom of this slide. A majority of that equipment is already in place. We're still waiting for a few pieces to be delivered. Some supply chain issues have delayed some of the equipment, but a majority of that is in place right now and is fully operational within the Valley. So as we do with all of our programs, we're always looking to ensure that our programs are meeting the goals that's set by your board, and that we're meeting the needs of the Valley Ag operations and constituents. And we understand that this program does not operate in a bubble. We understand that Valley Ag continues to face challenges outside of this program and outside of the ongoing phase-out strategy. Things such as the drought conditions, the Sigma water restrictions, the loss of alternatives that John talked about when he showed you that rise in burning several years ago, the loss of the biomass plants, and then there's a variety of other impacts to the agricultural industry. So we're certainly understanding of those issues. We're continuing to monitor the grant program participation levels to ensure that we're responsive to the needs of the Valley Ag community, and again, particularly those smaller growers. We're continuing to engage with Valley Ag organizations and community-based organizations to really make sure that we're seeking opportunities to provide those outreach opportunities, again, to those smaller growers to make sure that they have equitable access to the funding. With that, we're anticipating that the current funding rate is really forecasting that we're going to run out of money within the next 12 months. And that's before the January 1st, 2025 final phase out deadline. And because of that, we're actually looking at proposing some additional program enhancements that will actually extend the available funding, get us closer to that 2025 deadline. Working in combination with that and seeking additional funding for the program, we think that these additional program enhancements are necessary to accommodate what we need to do over the next 18 months or so. So given that, we're proposing two changes to the program today. The first one is to institute a cap of 500 acres of removal per entity per calendar year. Right now, there's no cap. And so we've done an analysis, and we think that a 500 acres of removal per entity is a great spot. It will allow us to extend our available funding by several months and get us closer to that January 2025 date. And we're also proposing to increase the small grower incentive, that $100 per acre that I talked about earlier. We're proposing to increase that to $400 per acre to really draw in some more of those smaller farmers. And this will allow them to bear some more of those fixed costs that are in the program, that regardless of the size of the removal that you're doing. So smaller removals, they have some certain fixed costs that are harder for those smaller ag operations to bear. So we're proposing that increase then to offset some of those additional costs. And we looked at a lot of different reasons for that. We've already made significant progress. As I mentioned, 22% of the total applications have come from the smallest of the small growers. And these proposed enhancements are designed to further increase access to the program for these small ag operations. They currently receive that $100 per acre in all categories. They have those considerably higher fixed costs. Right now, the current incentives for the small growers cover about 50% of the project costs. With the increase from $100 to $400 per acre for the smallest ag operations, we're forecasting that to be right around 70% of the project cost. So it makes it a little bit easier for them to bear those costs. So with that, just some next steps. As I mentioned, obviously, we believe that significant additional funding is needed in the program to support the final phase-out strategy by January of 2025, and we'll continue to advocate. We'll work with our industry partners, our federal and state partners, to find additional funding to support the transition away from burning in the Valley. We'll continue to look for opportunities to support Valley growers in leveraging some of the other state and federal programs that are out there, the USDA EQIP program and the Healthy Soils program, the State Healthy Soils program. We're continuing to find ways to partner with those two programs to extend the reach of our funding here in the Valley. And then, if approved by your board today, we would immediately implement the suggested program enhancements, the 500-acre cap and the additional adder for the smallest of the small growers here in the Valley. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions. John and I would be happy to take
any questions for John or Todd. And I see Member Pereira.
Good morning. Can you just clarify for me on the acreages, how that works? So if a grower has 600 acres and they're going to pull out 90 acres, do they qualify for the additional $300 per acre bonus?
So it's based on the total acreage in the Valley that you farm. So if your total acreage is 500 or less, then you qualify for, or 100 or less in total, you qualify for the additional adder. It's not just represented by how much that specific field is or that specific parcel is. It's that your size is based on the total acreage that you farm within the San Joaquin Valley.
Okay, and so then the 500 acre maximum, then would that be a grower's total aggregate acreage is 500 or less?
Yes.
Not 500 of removal. So if somebody has 2,000
Well-
acres, they want to pull out 500, they qualify or don't?
They do. That's a great point. So the 500 acre cap is a cap on the acres of removal that you want to do. So you can be a very large grower in the valley, but you're going to only receive an incentive for up to 500 acres in any one calendar year. But yeah, the largest of the large growers can still participate. They would just be capped at 500 acres of removal.
All right, thanks for clarifying. Great
Yeah.
job.
Thank you. Member Robinson?
First of all, thank you. The small growers are the backbone of this economy. And so thank you for trying to help. Sometimes I get worn out on the dictates, but I love the solutions. And those are great solutions that you've offered. One problem with being a small farmer is oftentimes, it's a one-man band. And so consequently, they need as much help. A lot of times they don't seek these options because they don't have time to seek the options. So the question is there any ease of application or anything else like that to kind of help them?
We do have a wonderful staff of specialists here at the building, and we will basically walk them through the application process, help them collect any documentation that they need to collect, and really just sort of hold their hand through that entire process if necessary. We pride ourselves on our customer service here, and we're willing to do whatever we can to assist the growers. We're available by phone, email, Zoom, whatever that might be, walk-ins. If they want to come in and just ask questions about the program, we're always willing to help and get those applications complete and submitted.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is not something that's necessarily related to what's being presented, but with our small farmers increase, I'm sure they will well appreciate that. But with the equipment that they have to use to do the chipping and grinding, is there some sort of, do they work collaboratively with each other, these farmers, and small farmers, so that maybe the price is reduced for them so that they're not paying the full cost of having this big equipment come into their area and do the process?
We definitely have seen that, sort of the economy of scale. If you have several small farmers in one area that are all doing removals, we have seen instances where they'll schedule those removals at a very similar time so that the equipment can come out once and take care of all of those small farms. We have seen that, and it's definitely something we support, and it helps them to offset some of those costs.
Okay, but a farmer who's not in an area where there are other farmers that are small nearby, I would assume he or she has to foot the bill as is.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sheriffs?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, such important progress on the phase out of the ag open burning, because this is so important to our air quality goals and the health goals. It's obviously incredibly complex and requires a lot of collaboration. In terms of the small farmers, the enhancement, some people may look at that 70% of a project cost and what? That seems unfair. This other person only gets something. Yeah, but wait a minute. It's not so much the percent of cost. It's the cost per acre. And it's the cost per acre that is increased in the smaller operations. So ways that we can support those who are truly small farmers is appreciated by a small farmer. In terms of our helping finance equipment, which is an important part of the program working, is there anything in this that's pushing cleaner technology in that equipment? I'm sure they all have to meet whatever the standards are, but you've heard me before cleaner, faster. I'm sure whatever the standards are, they're inadequate. But yeah, a question is there anything in it that helps promote cleaner equipment out there? Because yeah, that equipment's going to be there for a long time. You know, we're going to be depending on that stuff for decades to get this job done.
And yeah, they do have to meet the cleanest available technology that is available. We don't want to restrict it so much that we don't get the equipment out there. But we do promote in all of our programs the cleanest available technology. So if we do see something that, you know, is cleaner than what's already out there, that would be a requirement in any future allocation of equipment funding. At this point, the $30 million has been allocated, latest and greatest technology, what's available today, and it's the cleanest available out there right now. If there were future rounds of equipment funding, those would include what the cleanest available technology is at that.
And one just last quick piece, Mr. Chair. So it was actually one of the program criteria. So when the program was adopted by the board, it wasn't just promoting that, but it was hard criteria that it had to be the tier four final, you know, so, which was the cleanest then. But as Todd just mentioned, into the future, as you know, even cleaner options become available. Obviously, if we were to fund more of those, you know, then we'd want to look for those technologies. But yeah, that was one of the criteria the board included in the guidelines for the program.
Thank you. Member McCauley?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, staff. I do appreciate the presentation, especially the incentives for the small farmers. However, you know, at a time when we're asking farmers to take land out of production, I do find it very troubling that we're putting a cap on the amount of acres that a farmer can submit under. So very concerning for me, and I know staff is going to continue to work on lobbying for additional funds, but I would ask that our colleagues on the board continue to reach out to the state as well. Obviously a very tough time for farming in the Central Valley. So I guess my question would be, do we have any estimates on the lifetime of the program with or without the cap on the number of acres?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do. Right now, we're forecasting status quo. If we weren't to make any sort of changes, we're forecasting within the next 12 months to be out of funding with this current round. What this will do, instituting this cap, it will provide several more months, and it all depends on the types of projects that come in. But it does get us closer to that January 1st, 2025 deadline, not all the way there. And I think that's why the significant advocacy for additional funding is going to be very important. But by instituting these caps, this does move that sort of end date out several months.
And I would assume, just like with the 617 item, you know, if more funding is made available, we could obviously open that cap back up and accept the larger acres.
Yeah, absolutely.
Member Preciado.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe buying equipment is a lot of money is going into buying equipment, but also that equipment is not going to be used all the time. And for small farmers, it's probably, I don't know, there should be, when we're talking not duplicating, so it'd be impossible for every farmer to buy the equipment and do the shipping. And I think there might be a way where we can, find a way where not necessarily buy the equipment. If there's already equipment there that could be available in a way and have control of how the money is spent, so I actually will be more, get to the goal that we're looking at. And I think that's something. And when you talk that there are ways for dust control and that is recycling that grindings, is there a charge for the other farmers or community that use it, or is there a charge for it? Is that free or has that been worked out? Thank you.
Great questions. And I'll answer the first one first. In terms of who's purchasing the equipment and how it's being utilized in the valley. What we've done to date is we've required, generally speaking, contractors are buying the equipment. It's not necessarily an individual farmer who's buying this piece of equipment because it is a fairly large piece of equipment. You're not using it all year long. So we've seen that it's been contractors that have purchased the equipment. And they are required to provide that service valley-wide to any grower who needs to utilize that service. If an individual farmer wanted to purchase a piece of equipment, there's actually a provision that he must offer that equipment to other farms in the area to make sure that that equipment just doesn't sit there idle, and the district's investment, the state's investment, does not just sit there idle for a majority of the time. So there are safeguards to ensure that the equipment is being used as absolutely much as possible, and so that it doesn't just get used by one farmer and then just parked for 10 months out of the year. So, that's certainly one of the provisions and one of the safeguards that your board has ensured is in the program. And your second question, I think I already forgot it. I apologize. What was your second question? Oh, the recycling. So there's a variety of different arrangements that can be made. Generally speaking, there's not a financial gain either way to this material that's provided. Sometimes, if it's being provided for an offsite beneficial reuse, for instance, a contractor may have a contract with Caltrans to put this material on the side of the road for dust suppression. And so there may be some financial gain there, but that's all taken into account when the final grant amount is calculated. Any financial gain that they may receive is offset, so that nobody's actually making money on the program, that it really is a benefit to the entire valley.
Thank you. Member Robinson?
I like the big guys, but what I like about this is you actually touch more job creators. So thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Is there a cap or guidelines on what these contractors can charge?
Not necessarily, but I think the market is now evolving, and I think the market is dictating the cost. What we're seeing now is that if you're charging too much, people are going to go to the next guy. I think, and that's where we want it to be, right? You want to make sure that this is market driven, and they're going to go with the lowest cost. The farmer's going to go with the lowest cost operator that they can find. So the emerging market that this has created, I think, is now kind of normalizing, and you're seeing those prices, fairly consistent.
Yeah. Member Rickman?
Thank you, Chair. And this question for Samir, is it possible to draft a letter that you can give us that we can send to our, not kind of letterhead, so we can send to our assembly members and federal and senators asking for more funds?
It's done. Do you see that?
Yes, just related to that, we on behalf of the board, the Ledge platform includes this as a priority, so we are already advocating through the district process. But I think the more letters and more valley-wide support for that, would be tremendous. So we'll work on something that outlines this is one priority. The farmer funding, just to put a plug in there for that critical program as well, that funds the tractor upgrades, the major successes there. There's a couple of priorities that you may want to consider including in that type of advocacy. So if the board's okay with that, I think we make sure we hit on a couple of those key priorities, but absolutely something that we could share.
Perfect. All right, I see no more board members. We're going to go out to the public.
Okay, first online, we have Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Welcome back.
Hi, thank you. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera here again with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, and thank you for the update on the efforts to phase out agricultural burning. This has been definitely a long outstanding ask for many community members, and we appreciate the acknowledgement of climate change as a significant impact to consider. However, as we all well know, this phase out came to be from a piece of legislation from 2003 that has yet to be fully implemented. And that means this phase out is 20 years overdue. And that means additional 20 years of residents' health being impacted. So immediate and drastic action is needed. As a public health agency, we urge Valley Air to prioritize the health of residents. And as we are quickly approaching the 2025 deadline, I'd like to highlight the continued need to support those small farmers that you all were discussing, especially those operations with less than 100 acres. And we support the increase for those operations and encourage Valley Air to set up a system where those operations are prioritized over the larger operations to ensure an equitable process, especially for any farmers of color, low-income farmers. They definitely, like other board members have mentioned, do not have the staff to be able to access a lot of these applications. So definitely encourage those to be prioritized. And I'd also like to raise the concern with air curtain burners that was in some of the documents released to the public. We do not believe these should be funded. A major issue among the community members that have so strongly advocated for the past 20 years for the phase out of agricultural burning was the close proximity to their homes. And this threat is not eliminated with air curtain burners, and it still puts those living in close proximity to those operations health at risk. We were really, especially as a lot of folks don't have those air purifiers we were talking about earlier in this meeting. I've encouraged Valley Air to really think about those localized impacts as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, next online we have Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you. A few years back, there was an agricultural symposium conducted in Parlier. And it was there that UC Davis introduced this idea of grinding and incorporating material into the soil. And I thank the district and CARB for supporting this idea and making this happen. I thank the farmers for also participating. This is a very important thing in helping those of us who are breathing this air. Something beyond mobile sources has sometimes heavily impacted our air this winter. I haven't been able to go outside without an N95 mask on these days. I mostly stay in the safety of my home when the air is so impregnated and that you can't really see. It's just a brown fog that if you're on a freeway, it's a heavy pollution. I am guessing that it was ag permitted burning that contributed to this quick accumulation of unsafe air. During these days, I have been warned by the RON notices on my phone about the level of impure air. I want to thank you for now considering the small growers in this program. That is an important step forward to help us maintain as pure, as clean air as we possibly can through this program of reducing and eliminating agricultural burning. Thank you again for the work you have done on this. I hope we no longer have days that are so filled with smoke that you can't see very well. It looks like a brown fog. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Kevin Hamilton.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Kevin Hamilton, Central California Asthma Collaborative. I remember driving to Sacramento, as I want to do as part of my work, heading for CARB or for a meeting at the legislature or CEC at the end of burn season every year around the first week in March. And as I was driving up, I would point out to people in the car with me who would see these giant plumes of smoke rising on the horizons in both directions. And that would last well up into Manteca. And, that was what open burning looked like at that time. And for the residents in those small communities who suffer from chronic diseases like congestive heart failure, COPD, asthma, those moments could be disasters for them. that change has happened. I'm not seeing those plumes this last year. I expect not to see them again this year. And I want to thank the Air District for working collaboratively with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, of which I'm also a member, and others to bring this to the table and I believe eventually solve this problem. We're going to see the end of it here in a couple of years in a way that doesn't destroy the economy of the valley or the farmers who need this this asset, and takes care of the little guy. At the same time, 3 years ago, we walked through the doors of the Capitol with Air District advocacy staff, myself, my colleague Naimeen Martinez, and a few others, to advocate for a program called Farmer. The Farmer program is a tremendous asset for this community, and sadly, our governor chose to not include it in his budget. So as some of the funding for small farmers to operate this program is in that program, I think it behooves us all to take a moment and a step back and think about, what we want to put in a letter, even possibly jointly, if that's possible, to the governor to let him know, hey, this is really valuable. You can't, just take this casually and cut the legs out from under programs like this with a stroke of your pen on the budget. So just thought I'd pitch that in there at the same time. But kudos to the board and to the district for getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, if there are no further online comments, are there any public comments out of Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Okay, and we do have public comments here in the Fresno office.
Morning, Jesse Roseman. I'm a principal analyst with the Almond Board, and I just want to say it's rare to see so many co-benefits with one of these incentive programs. We really appreciate the work of Brent Holtz, who documented the value of whole orchard recycling. So it's not only an alternative to ag burning, but it's actually a really good agronomic practice. So I just thought I'd remind people of what those values are. It increases yield 19%, 58% increase in soil carbon, increases in nitrogen, organic matter, soil aggregation, and a 32% increase in water use holding capacity. While it does take a small increase in that first year in nitrogen, it's more than outweighed by the benefits longer term. So I think the program's developed in a really smart way, providing the equipment, which was one of the limiting factors to getting growers to be able to do this practice. So appreciate the wisdom in the room and designing that program. One concern, I think, has been that for almonds, which are harvested off the ground, there would be an increase in some of those chips at the Huller-Scheller, but to my knowledge, that has not been an issue. By the time that those orchards come into production again, those chips have broken down and there's no problem at harvest. I'll remind anybody thinking about it, the Almond Board developed a guide for whole orchard recycling. It's at almonds.com and lays out this whole process. In addition to getting the funding for how you should go about doing this. And since we've many times talked about water supply restrictions and orchards coming out of production, I'll just put in a pitch that anywhere where this has happened would be a good place during the spring snow melt, if your orchard's still lying there fallow and chipped, to do on-farm recharge. If your district has water available, go ahead and offer these fallowed fields during this spring runoff when we've got a lot of water, and use it for groundwater recharge. Really good opportunity to, again, stack benefits. And there's a recharge guide that the Almond Board has for that, again, at almonds.com. So lastly, again, along with the other speakers, just want to really appreciate the district for this program. And then, of course, these other agencies that are also putting incentive dollars behind whole orchard recycling. Great job.
Thank you for your comments.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Roger Isom with California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association and the Western Agricultural Processors Association. I'll start by thanking staff. They have made this program work very successfully. If you look at how much has been done in such a short period of time, it's tremendous. But I want to remind everybody how we got in this predicament. And if you look at the chart that Mr. Klassen put up there, we got in this dilemma because of the shutdown of the biomass plants. And we're able to get out of it as long as we have funding, and that funding is going to come to a close. But long term, the hope was that we would have alternatives to the biomass plant, whether that's renewable diesel plants or cellulosic ethanol or hydrogen or conversion to electricity through pyrolysis. None of those have come to fruition. And so when this program that the district talked about today was adopted, I reminded the board and I reached out to ARB to bring back the biomass collaborative, that we need to find alternative long-term solutions to this problem. And if we don't do that, we are going to be back in 2025 still in this same dilemma because we just don't have the funding, and it's going to be difficult. And I certainly agree with Mr. Hamilton, and I appreciate his comments, and I would welcome a partnership to go back to Sacramento to ask for that funding, and along with Farmer, because that to me in our world is equally, if not more important to do in terms of helping this district get into attainment. But the bottom line is it's successful because of the money. Growers can't afford to do the chipping and incorporation without this incentive funding. You can see that it's clearly evidenced by the success of this program. So, when you look at falling commodity prices, certainly in walnuts and almonds, it's about as difficult as it can be. Just as an example, in walnuts, we've taken out as much as 10, maybe 15% of the acreage in 1 year because of the prices, and I don't see that changing this year. We need the help in order to not burn it and be successful with the district. So I welcome the opportunity to work with the district and the environmental groups that have indicated such to try to go to the state and get funding. We've certainly been advocating with Manuel Cunha on that on the federal level with NRCS, with their programs. But I want to remind, and I'll end with this, we need that long-term solution. We need to reinvigorate the biomass collaborative and work towards long-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Roger?
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, Nisi Farmers League. First, I want to thank Samir, the entire team. Since 1993, 94, the smoke management program that you folks put together. And some of the speakers today that were on the Zoom don't have their facts together, and I'm very disappointed in that, but that's just the way life is. First, I think Dr. Hamilton or Mr. Hamilton, I appreciate his offer to help get Farmer back into the arena, along with, I believe Kevin would support the effort of getting the agricultural burn incentive back, because that agreement was there, Dr. Sheriff and Dr. Pacheco Warner. That was there, was that this was not just going to be a one-time thing. All of you know what SGMA is. Estimated 500,000 acres to 1 million acres is going to be and is being pulled out currently. A lot of the chippers are over there. When I say over there, on the west side. What happens on the east side and what happens in the middle? So it is very important that we're going to have to look at and working with the district very closely on machinery being still a part of this equation. It's not going to go away of taking land out. It's just not going to go away. So we need to focus on that. And we do need to get this legislature and this governor back into the importance of what he agreed to do with us in agriculture. We feed the world. The farm worker community is part of us. NRCS, in the budget of the $37 million that was put in 1997 in the Farm Bill for air quality only across the country, we get 22 million of that 37. And on Tuesday, the Farm Bill hearing was in Tulare at the equipment show. We asked for that increase like was in the previous farm bill in 22. Another 13 million would be included and added onto that 37 that would come to California, a portion of, big chunk of it, of the 13, for agricultural burn incentive. That means to the growers. That's small growers under $900,000. That's the entire EQIP program, no matter what it is. So again, NRCS is a very important partner with us in this. But I want to thank the staff. Yes, we do reach out to our small growers, especially minority growers that we represent, the African American farmers, et cetera, and the Hispanic community. But I want to thank Todd, Aaron Turingo, and his entire staff on actually meeting with our farmers. Anytime there's a problem, I call and they jump on it. And I really thank you, Samir, for all that great effort. But Todd, you and Aaron have been tremendous on that, and I thank you all. Board, I hope you approve the cap, and I hope you approve the increased funding. I think it's well worth it, and we need to get to 25.
Thanks, Manuel. Seeing no one else here in Fresno, I'm going to come back to Member Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a quick question. When if these changes are approved today and those get uploaded to the website, could staff please email me the link, the new link to the new program?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we
And then,
anticipate having the changes made within a day or so, upon approval.
All right. Thank you. And then with that, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Okay, and
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. This is we're receiving this report, but again, because we're making a change, I'll feel more comfortable if we do a common consent on a go-forward basis, because we are changing the amount of reimbursement. It's not listed as a motion, but we're going to take it up as a common consent, if that's okay with everyone. Before we do that, I think I want to comment on this just because I'm one of those utilizers of this system, right? I grow trees and we have to replace trees, and I have seen choke points. And regarding some of the calls that we had today, it's Roger, I think, put it out there pretty nicely that you have capacity issues, you have technology issues. We have Brent Holtz, I think he's with UC Extension, right? That talked about the whole. You have to do the studies on the technology side, then you have to build capacity. And just like us trying to electrify the grid and put electric vehicles on, there's always a choke point, and it's our job to fill those gaps. That's the way I look at it, to bring this to bear. And in the end, success is equaled by money, because we bought equipment to increase the capacity at this point, because we see the benefit of it. And it's not that we didn't, this board long before me wasn't trying to clean the air. I think that when people say that we're not moving fast enough, this is, for government, this is at a meteoric pace. People have no choice in a couple of years to burn. And so we need to build up that capacity and have an alternative, because there is, without an alternative source of bio-industrial, and I think we just had the CDFA secretary in Stanislaus County last week with former USDA secretary Ann Veneman to come down and talk about this issue. This is how important this issue is to agriculture and to the health of the people living in the valley. So you have the two lines intersecting. We just need to come up with more solutions, which requires more money. I take everyone up on their offer. Anyone that wants to go walk the halls, along with our staff, Tom Jordan and Samir, myself, anyone that wants to go, I invite you, because the more money we have available, the quicker we're going to clean up the air in the San Joaquin Valley. So just a couple of thoughts. We do have, I'm not going to take it as a motion, or I'm going to look at Annette really quick. Can I just do it as common consent?
Yeah, you can provide general guidance to.
Yeah, general guidance on what were the recommendations, the change in the recommendations. We do have people, so I'm just going to make sure everyone's going to give me a nod if they're okay with the direction. Okay, and in Modesto, nods if you're okay. And David in Bakersfield? All right, you got it. Thank you so much. Again, appreciated. I continue to say the same thing. I love the way we adjust as we move forward and continue to make things better. All right. Nothing else. Item number 9, receive update on attainment planning efforts to address federal standards.
Mr. Chair, board members, I'd like to introduce Emily Nealand, who was recently promoted as the program manager in our planning department, and who's working really hard with her team on addressing the various Clean Air Act issues, our plans, and other related matters. So she's going to be co-presenting this next item with John Klassen, who we just heard from as well, and Director of Air Quality Science there and planning. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Thank you, Chair, members of the board, John Klassen. So I'll kick off this presentation here, giving you an overview of where we are with attainment planning for the PM 2.5 and ozone standards. So just a bit of background here. I know a number of you are well aware of this, but the challenges that we face here in the San Joaquin Valley for air quality really are unmatched due to our unique combination of our topography and our meteorology. So we have mountain ranges to the east, to the west, to the south of us. We have weather conditions during the summer where high pressure comes over the valley, or temperature inversions during the winter season that places a lid over the bowl of the valley. When those conditions happen, emissions can build up over time and lead to concentrations that can exceed these federal air quality standards. We have major goods movement corridors through the valley, I-5, Highway 99, population growth, pollution transport from other areas. We have wildfire impacts that have been significant in the past few years. Because of all these challenges in front of us, we have to do more. We have to reduce emissions even more than other regions to get to attainment of these standards. And we've had to go further and further with our rules and regulations to get to very low emissions levels to be able to target attainment of these different air quality standards. Just showing on a graph here of what I was talking about, where we can have a lid over the bowl of the valley. Usually in an ideal setting, as you go up in the atmosphere, the temperature gets colder and colder, and so whatever pollution there is can rise up, can disperse, swell. But when we have these conditions where there's what's called an inversion layer, where you have cold air, then a layer of warm air right above it, that can put a lid over the bowl of the valley. And that combination of having these temperature inversions with us being in a valley in a bowl, that creates that lid, and the pollution can get trapped and build up to higher levels. There's a number of sources of emissions that contribute to that, what can happen in the buildup. Mobile sources, industrial sources, different area sources like residential wood burning, and these are all considered in the air quality plans that we put together. So to give you a bit of background on the plan, on the standard development process, the US EPA are the ones that set air quality standards for the nation. There are 6 criteria pollutants that they look at. They look at ozone, particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and lead. And within particulate matter, they have standards for both PM10 and PM 2.5. EPA looks at these generally every 5 years to make updates if needed based on the latest health studies that they review. On the right-hand side there, we're showing a cycle there of the process that we go through, where if EPA sets a standard, states and local air districts then build an attainment plan on how we're going to reduce emissions to get to that level of air quality. Progress and time goes by, we reduce emissions, air quality improves, and then eventually EPA will then, roughly 5 years later, look at the latest health studies, the latest science, and see if there's a need to change the standard to lower it again. And if they do, that cycle starts again with a new attainment plan, new strategies, more emissions reductions. The table here on the bottom left-hand side shows the progression of what's happened over the past decades of time here. So for 8-hour ozone, there are now 3 standards there. You can see the years that those were set. And then for PM 2.5, there are 3 standards in place as well, as EPA has gone through this process. To give you a scope here of the different agencies involved in air quality planning. So I mentioned the US EPA, they're at the top, and they provide oversight over the nation's air quality standards. They issue the standards, they put out implementation rules on how those standards should be implemented that states have to follow. And so at the state level, that's the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, and they provide oversight over the state and local air districts on plans that they put together and their strategies. They have direct jurisdiction over mobile sources, so they have regulatory authority over cars, trucks, off-road equipment, and that's distinct from us there on the bottom there, where we have jurisdiction over some area sources, but mostly stationary sources like processing plants, industrial facilities, some area sources like residential wood burning. We work directly with CARB and we put together these, what's called a state implementation plan, or ASIP, for these different air quality standards that the EPA establishes that leads to emissions reductions and air quality improvements. And we've put a lot of effort into this over the decades. Your board has adopted numerous attainment plans to address those air quality standards that also include different rules and regulations to get emissions reductions. And the chart here on the right-hand side, which is also here in our boardroom, just shows how much has changed over time through these efforts. Seeing about a 93% reduction in NOx emissions from stationary sources over this time period. NOx is really critical for us. That's a precursor to the formation of both ozone and particulate matter. So getting those NOx reductions has been a cornerstone of our strategies over the decades. And overall, NOx has changed significantly, not just in stationary, but over a 75% reduction through this time period from all the different categories. CARB has adopted numerous mobile source emissions controls over the last few decades, and their efforts combined with ours, it really is the nation's toughest emissions control program because we have to go so far to attain these standards because of our challenges. We have a strong incentive program that's coupled with this. We've spent between public and private investment over $4.5 billion in incentive programs to also help get emissions reductions. And through all this effort, we continue to reduce emissions and continue to improve air quality, and that really is reflected in the change we've seen over the past 20 years. This is showing PM 2.5 concentrations across the valley. On the left-hand side, we show a progression of change for a 24-hour average design value. This is the 24-hour average. This is more of a winter season issue when we see our peak daily average values. You can see what it used to look like back in 2003, about 20 years ago, where we saw a lot of areas in that orange or red category, and you can see this progress over time where it's getting better, and you can see where we're projected to go by 2024. On the right-hand side is an average over an entire year, an annual average. So you can see where we were about 20 years ago. You can see the progression over time of the improvements that we're seeing and where we're expected to go in the coming years. And then similarly for ozone, we're showing a 20-year progression here of where we used to be back in the year 2000 with ozone concentrations. You can see a lot of dark red, purple areas back 20 years ago. And as we've reduced emissions and NOx and VOC, you see this also improving throughout the valley. So through the implementation of our plans, like I mentioned, a number of rules and regulations are developed and implemented. The list that we're showing here, and I won't read everything on here, but this is just a summary of the recent actions your board has taken for our latest PM 2.5 plans and then our latest ozone plans. You can see a lot of action has happened over the past couple of years for these different industrial sources and different rules. The rows here highlighted yellow, these are ones that we are currently working on right now that are related to our PM 2.5 plans and our ozone plans to continue to reduce PM 2.5 and VOCs to continue to get those reductions. And just an example of what this looks like. This is an example we're showing for industrial boilers, just showing how far we've had to go to get emissions reductions from some of these processes. On the left-hand side, you can see it's a depiction here of how much has changed through our different time periods and rule revisions, that things are getting more and more stringent. New technology becomes available to get those emissions reductions, and you can see where we're projecting to go in 2024 and beyond is about a 98% reduction in emissions from those types of units. And a lot of different categories are this exact same way, where we've seen huge reductions over time, and getting anything more out of these different categories is getting more and more difficult. So with that, I'll pass it to Emily, who's going to give us an overview of some recent planning actions and our work to address contingency measures.
Perfect. Thanks, John, and good morning, Mr. Chair and your board. Thanks for having me here this morning. So in regards to our ongoing PM 2.5 planning efforts, most recently, the district and CARB adopted the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, which addresses the 1997, 2006, and 2012 PM 2.5 standards. The attainment strategy within the plan includes both stringent stationary and mobile source control measures, as well as incentive-based control measures, which are accelerating the deployment of new clean vehicles, equipment, and technologies across a variety of sectors. The vast majority of the district's emission reduction commitments are achieved through enhanced regulations. In addition to the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, the district and CARB completed a plan revision for the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard, which was adopted and submitted to EPA in October of 2021. EPA has approved some key portions of the 2018 PM 2.5 plan. However, there are significant actions that are still pending and remain with EPA. Some of the recent approvals include the Serious Plan for the 2006 standard, except for contingency measures, the Moderate Plan for the 2012 standard, again, except for contingency measures, the attainment of the 1997 24-hour standard, as well as approval of new regulations, which include the new ag burn phase out, residential wood burning strategy, among other regulations. As many of you know, EPA disapproval and inaction can result in a number of devastating consequences to public health and the economy, including Clean Air Act penalties and sanctions, which can include loss of transportation funds, loss of local control, and permitting barriers. This leads to regulatory uncertainty, inefficiencies, confusion, as well as inequity in addressing clean air quality and public health challenges, given the significance of federal mobile sources and the threat of sanctions that are imposed solely on regions and not on EPA. Specifically for the 1997 PM 2.5 standard, as I mentioned, the district and CARB submitted a SIP revision for the 97 annual standard in October, and we're still awaiting EPA approval of that. Additionally, the Valley meets the 24-hour standard and potentially meets the annual standard. For the 2012 PM 2.5 standard, EPA had proposed full approval of the plan in December of 2021. However, they then reversed their decision and proposed disapproval in October of 2022. So in response to this, the district and CARB withdrew those portions of the 2018 plan related to the 2012 standard, which I'll add we had submitted early. And the district is currently working with CARB on an updated plan for the standard, which is due this year. And I know you've heard me mention contingency measures here a few times already, but specifically contingency measures are extremely challenging given the fact that there's a number of court cases and litigation that has made them very complex. And EPA has yet to provide guidance on how to address these really complex requirements. As a result, EPA has disapproved or proposed disapproval of district contingency measures, which is a significant issue not only for the district, but also for other non-attainment areas. And this leads to federal sanctions and federal implementation plan implications. And specifically, the district currently has what we call clocks running for our contingency measures, as well as for other plan elements. And there's 18 and 24-month timeframes attached to these actions. So as I mentioned, contingency measures are extremely complex and difficult in light of recent court rulings that have challenged EPA's interpretations of the requirements. Specifically for the Valley, not only is this already a really complex requirement to address, but we have non-attainment challenges under multiple national ambient air quality standards. So we have to create a contingency measure for each of these standards. Additionally, the district and CARB are already implementing every measure feasible. And for all of our rules, we're leading the nation in implementing the most stringent measures that we possibly can. So there is a scarcity of measures that are available for us, and based on our non-attainment issues, we can't hold anything back. Additionally, contingency measures need to be implemented automatically following what's called a contingency trigger, which is infeasible for most control technologies as they take time to install and get up and running. So this leads to a scarcity of measures that meet the highly restrictive definition. And in addition to that, contingency measures existing policies say that contingency measures need to reduce a certain amount of emissions, being 1 year's worth of reasonable further progress towards attainment of the standard. So it's extremely difficult for the district to identify a measure that achieves this amount of emission reductions. So with that, EPA has stated that they're coming out with guidance here in the near future to help areas like the Valley tackle these difficult issues. So we're currently working with CARB to evaluate options to address this evolving requirement, including regular meetings with EPA. And in addition to the local and state considerations for the district and CARB, we're also requesting that EPA review opportunities for sources under their control to provide their fair share assistance in addressing these air quality challenges. Specifically for the district, we've identified District Rule 4901, which is our rule for wood burning fireplaces and wood burning heaters as a potential contingency measure. And EPA's most recently approved this rule as meeting the most stringent measures requirements. However, residential wood smoke continues to be a significant contributor to ambient PM 2.5 levels here in the Valley. We're also looking at other potential measures through this evaluation that will be part of our contingency package. So potential updates to the rule could include establishing a sequence of more stringent curtailment levels upon determination from EPA that the valley failed to, number one, meet any reasonable further progress requirement, again, meaning that we're making progress towards that attainment date, meet any quantitative milestone in an attainment plan, submit a quantitative milestone report, or attain the applicable PM 2.5 standard by its attainment date. So as one example, this could look on the slide, we have one example of lowering the level 1 curtailment by 1 microgram following each trigger, and then maintaining the 35 microgram per meter cubed for the level 2 curtailment. So this is just one example of options that we're looking at. And I'll note that South Coast, they contain a similar contingency provision in their rule, which has been fully approved by EPA in April of 2022 as meeting PM 2.5 contingency requirements. And we anticipate returning back to your board in the second quarter of 2023 with our contingency package and associated regulatory amendments for your consideration. And this will be developed in coordination with CARB and EPA in conformance with EPA contingency requirements. And we just want to note that timely action is super critical from EPA to make sure that we get approval prior to the implementation of the Clean Air Act sanctions. On that note, there is a need for federal action and support as mobile sources make up the majority of emissions here in the Valley. And given the fact that the district and CARB are already implementing the most stringent measures feasible, it's increasingly critical that the federal government provide the necessary actions and resources to reduce emissions under their control, such as interstate trucks, locomotives, and aircraft. Additionally, there's unprecedented funding opportunities under the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law, and the district is specifically wanting to see funding prioritized for areas in extreme and serious non-attainment, environmental justice communities, affordable housing and sustainable community efforts, as well as other funding considerations for port-related programs, sustainable agriculture, forest management, and energy programs. In regards to our progress, the Valley has already demonstrated attainment of the federal PM10 1-hour ozone and 1997 24-hour PM 2.5 standards, and EPA has issued clean data findings for these standards. The district is also looking to attain the 1997 8-hour ozone standard of 84 parts per billion and the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard of 15 micrograms per meter cubed. And so we're currently working with CARB on putting together some additional analysis, including exceptional event documentation for submittal to EPA for their consideration and approval. And as part of this process, maintenance plans are required in order to be formally redesignated to attainment. And these plans show two maintenance plans, both showing 10 years of maintenance of the standard, so a total of 20 years of maintenance. And lastly, I wanted to touch on our ozone planning actions. Most recently, as you know, your board approved the 2022 ozone plan in December, which addresses the federal 2015 8-hour ozone standard of 70 parts per billion. And subsequently, the CARB governing board adopted this at their January public hearing. So this will now be transmitted to EPA for their approval. And we're going to continue to work with EPA and CARB as further information may be needed to support their approval. And we're going to continue to urge EPA to take timely action on this plan. And we will be keeping you up to date on the plan review process, as well as the strategy implementation in the coming years. And I'll pass it back over to John to talk about the new PM 2.5 standard.
All right, thank you, Emily. So yes, on top of all this work that Emily highlighted, there's now a new standard potentially coming out to give us more work to do. So going back a number of slides in this presentation, I talked about the EPA standard setting process. They go through every 5 years approximately. So EPA has been going through this process for PM 2.5 again. And early this year, on January 6th, EPA proposed a new PM 2.5 standard that includes a number of other elements along with the concentration levels. When EPA goes through this process, they only consider the health effects, the health science. They do not consider the implementation challenges, the compliance costs. And so this is just based on their health analysis and what they think the levels need to go to protect public health. So the image on the right-hand side here, we show what the current standard is. The annual standard right now is set at 12 micrograms per meter cubed, averaged over the entire year. The 24-hour standard, that's the daily average, is set at 35 micrograms, you go to the right-hand side, you can see what EPA is proposing at this point. For the annual standard, they're proposing to lower that level to the 9 to 10 microgram range. They're also taking comment on anywhere from the 8 to 11 microgram range before making a final decision. For the 24-hour standard, right now, they are proposing to retain that level at 35. But they're also taking comment on potentially lowering it as low as 25 micrograms or anywhere up to 35 as well. So the challenges that we feel that we could face for this, we're already designated what's called extreme non-attainment for ozone and serious non-attainment for PM 2.5. And so because of that, we already have the most stringent rules and regulations in the nation, coupled with what CARB does. And getting more and more emissions reductions are becoming more and more difficult to achieve. Just highlighting what Emily talked about with the 2022 ozone plan that your board approved a couple of months ago. The NOx levels that we need to get to achieve that standard that's set at 70 parts per billion, we need to get our NOx to about 62 tons per day to reach that goal. And so looking at the charts in the boardrooms, you can see how far we've come over the last 40 years and then how far we need to go. And in this plan here, we're saying we need another 72% NOx reductions from baseline levels to get to this ozone standard. And this is becoming very difficult, like I mentioned, with all of the controls we already have in place. Thinking about this new PM 2.5 standard coming out, we may need to go even further than this to reach this new annual PM 2.5 standard. This will take more analysis as this plan is produced and we go through that with CARB, but this is a potential that we need to go even further than what we're thinking for the ozone standard. And like Emily mentioned, getting emissions reductions from federal sources is becoming more and more important as time goes on. Mobile sources under the federal jurisdiction are becoming a bigger piece of the pie. And so getting emissions reductions from their sources going forward and for this new PM standard, we feel is going to be really critical to have that support from them. We wanted to share this map here. This is based on EPA's analysis in their proposed new standard for PM 2.5. This map is showing the potential areas that will be designated non-attainment for this new annual PM 2.5 standard. The dark green counties there throughout the nation, those are areas that will likely be designated non-attainment if they set the standard at 10 micrograms. So going from 12 to 10, those dark green areas would then require to do a plan for this new standard. The lighter green areas are what also would be brought in if they lower the standard to 9 micrograms. So you can see even more areas across the nation would have to come into this. So by looking at what this is looking like now, this certainly, even if it's set at 10 micrograms, this is not just a California issue. It's not just a San Joaquin Valley or South Coast issue. This is going to become a planning issue and a challenge for a lot of areas across the nation. A lot of urban areas are going to have to come in and do PM 2.5 planning likely for the first time if they haven't done this before. Just wanted to share a few points here on the projected timeline on how this could all come into play. So as I mentioned, early this year, EPA proposed the new standard. They're taking comment on it now. They're anticipated to finalize the standard in end of 2023 or early 2024. And then EPA then has a couple of years to designate areas as attainment or non-attainment, back to that map I showed on the previous slide. So they have a couple of years to go through that process to designate. Once that's done, then different states and local agencies have 18 months to put their plan together on how they're going to attain that standard. And then you can see the different potential deadlines here for a moderate deadline and then a serious deadline in the early 2030s and the mid 2030s to meet this new standard. So that's it for our overview, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I always love it. Here's a couple of questions. First of all, for Samir, you might want to remind the board again, EPA adopted and then they backed out of that. Can you explain why that happened?
Well, first, as you could see, very complex set of issues. So thanks, Emily and John, for trying to break that down and provide an overview of, for every one of these issues, there's quite a bit of drill down, but it is something that we regularly speak with the board about. There's a lot of very serious consequences if we don't get the planning right and if we don't work collaboratively, with CARB and EPA. So one of the key actions that Chair has brought up is something that was talked about a bit earlier, but it is the plan for the 2012 PM 2.5 standard. That was something that we worked on for a number of years with CARB and EPA. It was proposed for approval, was open for commenting, and then during that phase, EPA decided to propose disapproval of the plan on a couple of key issues. That plan was actually submitted a number of years early by this board as a means of moving quickly on emissions reductions and trying to make the gains that we were all looking for in reducing air pollution and improving public health. So technically, the plan wasn't even due, and so CARB actually withdrew the plan at that point so that we can basically do some updates and get it back to EPA and hopefully then secure the approval that we need. So that's one of a couple of major issues that we have in front of us. The one that Emily also talked about, just wanted to put a finer point on the contingency issue. There is a clock running for addressing contingency. The reason why it hasn't been fully addressed is because it's very complicated and it's been evolving and changing quite a bit since we've all been working on trying to address these requirements. A number of key court rulings have provided further interpretation of the requirements, and we're lacking actually updated guidance from EPA. Now we are talking to EPA. We are trying to understand where those requirements are heading, and so in parallel, the update today basically is bringing the board and the public up to speed on the development of updated contingency submission for EPA, so that we can move forward with addressing those requirements in the context of the updated requirements. But we have yet to actually see the final guidance or proposed guidance from EPA. So we're still waiting on that. Still moving forward with we do want to keep this process moving forward, because if we don't, those clocks do run out at some point, and so what happens is there are some pretty serious consequences under the Clean Air Act, including a federal implementation plan, including permitting sanctions, and including highway sanctions for federal transportation dollars to our region. And so it's very important that not only the board continues to push the envelope as the board has done in the past, but that also there's swift action, as was mentioned by Emily, on the guidance piece and also the review and approval piece by EPA. So this is something that we'll be coming back to the board to continue discussing over the next couple of months and presenting to the board our recommendations as to how to address those requirements, while we also work in parallel on addressing the updated planning requirements for the 2012 standard, amongst other things that were provided in the update today. So we want to make sure we keep a very real-time update to the board on exactly where these issues are.
And because South Coast had their contingency adopted, we don't expect any rough waters on adopting the exact same regulation, do we?
Well, we can't speak for EPA, but we do think that between the concepts that we're pulling together that were discussed on the residential wood burning rule, all the extra analysis that we're doing, CARB is also a part of this, right? So they're working on their supporting analysis as well. There's a great precedence that we've seen by EPA in approving, that a very similar measure, actually less stringent than the one that we'd be proposing with ours. We would feel strongly, and as we see the guidance as well, that what we return to your board with would be an approvable package. But obviously that's still up to EPA to make that call. As we could keep engaging with them.
I guess it would be my assumption that it would be fast tracked if it's more stringent than something that was already adopted.
That would be a reasonable assumption.
And the clock, we keep talking about 16 to 24 months, I think is what you said, Emily. Did they start at different times, or are we for different components of it?
So I appreciate getting right into the meat of this. We work in this, live in this planning world. There are two key clocks that are running. One related to the 97 plan and the planning elements, as Emily mentioned. EPA is reviewing that right now, and that clock started at exactly the same time as the contingency clock. So they're both actually running. They're all as of the end of 2021 is what started that clock, and so that's why this year is so critical, because you have that 18-month to 24-month time frame that we're all working, with in front of us.
Okay, and the last thing is that I can't remember. I think it was you, John, that talked about a bigger piece of the pie, the federally regulated, and I would offer it is the pie. It's becoming the pie, and we're becoming a slice of the pie. When you look at those bar graphs over there, I think the stationary source emissions were 40% on the NOx, in 1980, and now it looks like it's about 10% or 12%. So for people, and I always ask questions so people can understand the magnitude of what we're faced with, as well as the difficulty of trying to meet the attainment numbers with what's under our control, and then lowering the standard concurrently right now with what you're trying to deal with, to try and lower from 12 to 9, 10, wherever that ends up. It almost seems impossible, but back in 1980, I'm sure that the board said the same thing. It was impossible. So I don't believe it's impossible, but it becomes more costly. And again, the need for federal help and on the side that they regulate becomes more and more important. It's always been important. It becomes critical at this point. So any other questions for staff from board members? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the public.
Okay, online we have Kevin Hamilton.
Well, that was quick. Thanks again, Kevin Hamilton, Central California Asthma Collaborative. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your very astute remarks. Kind of comes back to it is what it is today for both ends of this argument. I think it's really important, and what I didn't hear very often in the staff presentation was the word health. These are the air quality health standards. Make no mistake about it. And as we learn more in the business that I'm in, and as we have more studies completed and more ability to conduct those studies and provide accurate information to inform these conversations that based on data that's building it's been building over the last 50 years. As that story is created, we find that, number one, there is no safe amount of particulate matter in 2.5 and smaller range to breathe. That's number one. What we still don't know is how much for how long. We're getting better at that. We've drilled down and narrowed those times shorter and shorter, which is why your 24-hour average is not changing as often as your annual average, or maybe it seems that way. But they try to balance each one out and move it forward in a way that is based on the health literature. So this type of pollution, especially from mobile sources, but from any internal combustion engine, the black carbon pollution coming off of there is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution, and is linked very clearly to birth defects, very clearly to dementia in certain groups of women. The story is over there. In fact, hardly anybody's doing any research there anymore because it's a settled question. So I think it's important to keep this in your forehead when you're thinking about this, that we all have families, we all have kids, we all have elders in our families, we all have somebody with a chronic disease, but this actually affects everyone over time. So again, with children, especially at developing bodies, the LA Children's Study has been running now since 1993. It's been looking at the impacts of this pollution on now 5 cohorts of kids in 4th through 6th grade. The oldest just turned 40. We're doing the Children's Health and Air Pollution Study here with Berkeley. We have 6 years worth of work. Our oldest kids are now 12. We are seeing this information. We are publishing this data. We know it's hard to make this lift, but it's the health of our community, folks, and us too. We just have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, next online we have Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you. I'd like to reinforce what Kevin has just said. We in this valley are breathing unsafe air. We have growing mobile sources. We have new homes being built, new warehouses being built, more trucks coming to our growing valley businesses, and trucks passing through our valley. There are days during the year where the air is unhealthy and unsafe for all of us breathing the air. Especially for those of us, and there are thousands of us with asthma and other respiratory diseases. We have people who are starting to react to the air, those who have moved here recently, developing asthma or other respiratory diseases. My husband and I moved here in 2003. I did not have asthma. I have developed asthma since living in this valley with this dangerous air. We are at risk of becoming very sick, even ending up in an emergency room. When I first realized I had asthma, I was having respiratory infections. I was taking antibiotics. Now I stay in my house. I use air purifiers. I use masks. I do everything I can to avoid breathing the air. It is not cheap, it's expensive to have asthma. There's medication, there's filters, there's doctor visits, there's hospitalizations. There is no, there is no choice. PM 2.5 has to be reduced. There is no choice. Ozone has to be reduced. Valley residents are depending upon the district to help us by doing everything possible above and beyond to make our air safe to breathe. One quick and cheap way to reduce burning is banning residential burning. That's a quick one and a cheap one. We are depending upon you. All of us are affected by this air. We are depending upon you. Not look at charts, not look at what EPA or anybody wants, but looking at the people who live here, looking at how we are affected by this air. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Next, we have Jed Holtzman.
Jed, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to all members for their time this afternoon, or this morning, I should say. My name is Jed Holtzman. I am a senior associate in the California office of RMI, and really appreciate the presentation today. As the district builds out its pollution reduction plans, we highly encourage the inclusion of zero emission appliance standards as a control measure for reducing both PM 2.5 and ozone created from downstream NOx emissions. According to UCLA, electrifying all gas household appliances in California would result in 350 fewer deaths, 600 fewer cases of acute bronchitis, and 300 fewer cases of chronic bronchitis each and every year, equal to $3.5 billion in health benefits annually from reducing fine particulate matter and NOx pollution from gas appliances. The health benefits within the Valley Air District alone are valued at more than $168 million every year in perpetuity. These health and air quality benefits grow substantially when including commercial appliances as well. The EPA's proposed disapproval of the district's initial plan noted that the district had not adequately identified potential control measures for controlling NOx and direct PM 2.5 emissions from building heating sources in the San Joaquin Valley. To that end, we sincerely hope that the district will follow the leadership of Bay Area AQMD, CARB, and South Coast AQMD and pursue its own regional zero emission appliance standards as it pursues attainment for the very important reasons previous speakers have noted. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Jed.
Thank you. Next, we have Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Cynthia, welcome back.
Thank you. Cynthia Woodsey here again. Thanks for the updates on these important issues. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get an update for the planning process for the 2012 standard. And as Valley Air rolls out this planning process, we definitely urge and encourage robust community participation and have an extensive public process that's accessible and equitable. So these updates are really important for our health. So encourage that some of these updates also be held potentially in the evening with interpretation available and invite community residents to hear some of these updates. I think it'd be extremely helpful for communities to help you all come up with some plans to come up with the new 2012 plan that has to be due this year. So definitely encourage that. And CVAC is also reaching out to CARB and EPA to support Valley Air, but we have also pointed to a variety of ways that rules and regulations can be improved locally, like regulating ammonia and additional control measures with a stronger implementation of best available control technologies. And like Kevin was mentioning, we need a really big focus and aspect on health. We need to prioritize people's health. Like Kevin mentioned, there's no safe exposure to PM particle pollution. So definitely encourage that prioritization of people's health over profits. And I'd also like to add that some of the actions that need to be taken to cleaner air aren't new. There are no new requirements or guidance that Valley Air is waiting for. Some of the requirements like Title VI are not new. There's clear guidance. What is new is that their EPA is actually implementing them. So we don't need guidance to tell us that having polluting operations near our schools, near our homes is not good for our health. It's not new knowledge that those living near these polluting operations are people of color, low-income communities. We really need to take action now. And I'd also like to add, as a member of Madera County, born and raised here in the Valley, and as an asthmatic, we shouldn't be normalizing these health impacts. I shouldn't have, at my 25 years, I shouldn't have 2 high school classmates that died of cancer. I shouldn't have had another friend that had a cancer scare. I shouldn't have family members who have been through several rounds of operations because of cancer. These health effects should definitely not be normalized. And again, prioritize that health over profits. We really, as a public health agency, we really need to prioritize that health. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
There's no further comments online. Bakersfield, do you have any public comments in your office?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comment in your office?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you.
All right, we are receiving a report. Did Dr. Sheriffs?
Yeah, I don't think I can be any more articulate than our chair, but I will say something anyway. And it's just a reminder, we are a public health agency. The metrics that we have to work with are the criteria pollutants. And we see how difficult this task is in terms of what we have direct control over. But accepting the responsibility, the challenge that goes with being that public health agency and having responsibility for the health of our communities throughout the Valley, we really do need to do more of our out-of-box thinking that people have talked about this morning. And by some of the out-of-box thinking I'm talking about is the leveraging of the federal and state, pushing on the Fed and the state in terms of the standards that they have control over. Looking at the graph more closely today, whoa, not only is the state pollution now less than the federal controlled pollution, the off-road exceeds the on-road mobile. So another area we need to be thinking about how to creatively and productively pushing in those areas. We need to be leveraging the air quality benefits of the climate money that is out there, the climate investments, both in the state and the federal, and looking at sharing guidance with other public agencies in the Valley regarding land use, regarding building codes, because there is a lot to gain there. So challenging. I think, in fact, board members have commented positively on all of those things this morning in our different agenda items. But yeah, we need to continue to stay focused on that and build on that. Thank you.
You're definitely more articulate than the chairman who has a 1,000-word vocabulary. So, for sure. Member Robinson.
I'm less articulate than both of you, but I'll be brief. Air health is very important, but the balance is the essential element. If I lose my health, right, or if I lose my job, my health declines rapidly. And therein lies the challenge for the board. It's just the mitigation here is the imperative element. But I also concur that, if we can put some pressure on the federal government and so forth, particularly on these mobile elements, that would be huge. Thank you.
Samir, did you want to comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a quick, just some takeaway, just a thought or two, just wanted to share in addition to what was said earlier. Out of box thinking is what the board is working on. Just wanted to respond a bit on the building standard side. So just recalling the ozone plan and some commitments that were made by the board to look at working with our fellow air districts, the CARB, on those standards. So we actually are working on that. It was something the board looked at. We're happy to get our staff connected to Jed, who provided that comment to explore, sort of what other ideas may be available there. The state is moving forward with statewide standards as well, which actually does accelerate technology over, some of the regional type approaches. So we'll see, that is a commitment the board made to actually look at that specifically. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, given the comment that was provided. And we're also happy to hear, that CVAC is willing to engage on the plan, and we'll certainly keep following up with them to see what ideas they may have and others in terms of moving forward with the out-of-the-box thinking that Dr. Sheriffs was talking about. I wanted to add that science is going to be very important too, especially as we think about PM 2.5, understanding exactly what's going on with PM 2.5, the changes in contributions from different sources and all that. So I would anticipate this year also coming back to the board with more conversation around how do we keep building on the science so that we can design plans that are as effective as possible. That's just another area of opportunity for us as well, is just continuing to build on that science. And on the Title VI issue, my last comment there, EPA has been very clear that they're actually developing new guidance for Title VI as related to plans. So it's something that we'll talk more about as the year goes on, but we didn't cover that much in the presentation, but just wanted to make sure it was clear that that is something that is in the works, that EPA stated their intent to adopt that guidance, given that there has been a lack of guidance in that area. So just a couple of clarifications, and appreciate all the comments from the public and all the passion, all the ideas that we heard today.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we are just receiving that report, so no action needed. Emily, thank you. Your first presentation, great job. John, always good sitting by the old pro. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 10, appoint an ad hoc budget subcommittee.
Didn't we do that last week?
It just finished.
Mr. Chair, board members, just looking for my notes here to give you a quick presentation on this item. We'll be looking for some volunteers, is the short of it, but let me give you a little bit more in terms of background here. We are working on the budget. It's a very extensive process that we undergo in developing the district's budget. We're required to actually present the recommended budget to the board by June 30th of each year. That's the time frame that we operate under. And under the Health and Safety Code, we're required to have one hearing of the recommended budget to allow for public comment 30 days prior to the budget adoption. So we typically have that budget hearing for public comment in May. So those are the two sort of key steps in the adoption process. There is a policy that the board has pulled together that establishes a budget ad hoc subcommittee to help inform our budget process and guide staff as we develop the budget. In that policy, there's an appointment that occurs, which is the item that's before you today. The subcommittee is presented with a proposed recommended budget. It's a great opportunity to learn about the district's operations. So often the board has wanted to see maybe some of the newer board members as well to be a part of that, because we go through a very extensive process in developing the budget. It's a zero-based budget. You may have heard that term before, where we basically build a budget from the ground up. We forecast all of the work in the coming year, all of the expectations of the board and the public, the various goals and mandates that we have, and then present basically what we're doing with new efficiencies, new ways of doing things, whatever resources are needed, and they're coming in from various programs. We actually pull all that together and present that budget to the subcommittee with it's one meeting, just as far as commitment goes, a couple of hours, at least worth of, it's one day, one meeting for a couple of hours, just to be, to be clear. So the board chair, has a prerogative to make these appointments. So typically there would be a volunteering. I want to remind my last point, the board of who was on the subcommittee last year, just to recap that. So it was Monty Reyes, Councilmember Reyes, Dr. Pacheco Werner, Councilmember Lewis, Supervisor Mendez, Dr. Sheriffs, who's been actually on that subcommittee. Appreciate you for more than once, and Mayor Preciado as well. And I think I know Buddy, and I think Supervisor Mendez and Mayor Preciado. I think you may have been on there a couple of times as well. So that's a recap of who was on there last year. And with that, the chair does typically serve on the subcommittee as well, Chair Chiesa. So I just wanted to note that as well. And
so there's 5
volunteers. It can be up to well, it's typically 5 or 6. It can be up to 7 technically, but generally it's been 5 or 6 members, and that provides coverage as well if something were to come up, illness or other reason that one of the board members couldn't make the meeting. So I'll turn it back to you and the rest of the board for just taking volunteers.
So if I'm going to sit on there, I think that because Member Bessinger isn't here, he's definitely on it. And then we can, let's make sure we have regional proximity too, north and south. I always like representation, so.
Well, I sat on it when I first came on the board, and it was quite informative and educational. And so with that, I would like to recommend that supervisor to the west of Tulare County be nominated to be a part of that.
Okay, Member Robinson, are you okay with that?
Not very good with direction. I'm sorry. Not very good with direction, but I think that might be me.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
I accept, yeah.
Okay, and I'm just looking through the list of people who might not have served. Yeah, I do want to see though. Supervisor Rickman, has he participated before? I see him looking at me.
You see him ducking under the.
I can't hear you. That's what he's saying. You guys can't see. I can't hear you. Are you okay serving Supervisor Rickman? Or if you don't want to, it's okay.
No, that's Chair. Thank you. That's fine. Since we don't even get lunch here over in Modesto, I might as well sit on that too.
When I was in Modesto, not only did they provide lunch, but they barbecued. So it must be the company.
Hey, you sure seen the looks I just got. I'm just joking. They feed us here.
What was the air filter control in the barbecue?
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
It was during the Zoom time when I was on it. Will it still be a Zoom meeting? Okay.
Everyone's gonna, I'm in.
Exactly.
Okay, Rickman. So 2 more. Who wants to serve? You okay? Okay. Member McCauley, you're gonna have a bunch of new ones, and we can have 1 more and feel comfortable. Any other volunteers?
I suspect either Dr. Pacheco or I will be.
Okay.
Ask her first.
Okay, because you did it last year. Did she do it with you last year?
She also both.
Okay, so we'll ask
If you need it.
her first, and then Dr. Sheriff will be our fallback. Perfect. You have your committee.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be the biggest budget ever.
That may have been the fastest committee selection process that we appreciate all the volunteering and willingness to serve on that committee. Appreciate that.
Okay. On to 11. Is someone going to handle the Air Resources Board?
No, I just wanted to note that Dr. Pacheco Werner would typically just summarize, recap what's in the report. It is in the agenda package, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to take them, but the information is available in the agenda.
Okay, I see no questions. On to the Executive Director report.
Just got a couple of quick things. Just wanted to highlight and extend a lot of appreciation to board members. I know many of you were at the World Ag Expo this week. We actually had a booth at the Ag Expo where we were working to communicate, all the various grant opportunities and build relationships with the ag community as we keep working on these different rules and programs that we heard quite a bit about already today. I made it to there on Wednesday and I was joined, Dr. Pacheco Warner actually went there, and Gideon Krakow, who's a board member, a CAR board member and a South Coast board member, also took the time to actually be there to learn about the innovation that is going on in the valley, and just the various technologies that are coming to bear, not only on the air quality side, but there's also a lot of water related efficiencies, and it was pretty amazing to see the range of technologies that we saw there. And there were some great conversations around how to continue transitioning to deal with just a variety of challenges that are facing valley agriculture to new and cleaner technologies. So just wanted to note and just extend appreciation to. There was a lot of attention, I think, going towards the funding that was talked about today as well, the Farm Bill and sustainable ag funding, and how we can try to bring that basically to our region to support these transitions. I also wanted to just note and just be working with the board members, would like to come and speak to various boards and councils over the next period of time. I'm working. I've already spoken recently to the County Board of Supervisors in Stanislaus. Merced County has been gracious enough in working with Supervisor Pereira to schedule an item on an upcoming agenda there. It's looking like pretty soon here, actually being able to speak to the Merced County Board. I'll be working with Supervisor Pereira on that, and just an opportunity for us to present an air quality update and make sure that the local governments are fully aware of the opportunities that are in front of us, the funding, some of the challenges, and just continue supporting good communication and support for our ongoing clean air missions. So I just wanted to note that I'll be working with various board members and clerks to make that happen. And obviously, we're always engaging with a variety of CBOs, social, civic organizations, whatever we can do to present and engage with residents. If anybody has any ideas, if you're part of any clubs or organizations, or if there's forums where you want us to come in and speak, we're always looking for those opportunities as well. And just wanted to offer that invitation. And I'll just close one last update. I was actually in DC last week advocating on behalf of VR District on the various issues that many of which were discussed today, the funding, prioritization. Emily did a good job talking at a very high level about the prioritization of the Inflation Reduction Act, the bill funding, and other funding sources. We're working very aggressively on this front. There's a lot of information that's being made available now as different agencies try to roll this money out. So we are trying to figure out ways to empower the Valley to take advantage of that funding to support local government, local organizations, community organizations, whoever it might be that's eligible for this funding. And so it is an ongoing and a super high priority for us to try to bring as much of that money to the Valley for the variety of issues that we have to deal with here. So I just wanted to offer that assistance and just provide that update that we had a number of, I think, pretty successful meetings in making the case for why we need that investment here, and just support from the federal government, whole of government approach to supporting us as we deal with the challenges that were brought up. So important from a public health perspective and keeping the Valley viable in the context of moving forward with the various standards. So I just wanted to provide that quick update on that. And I just want to, Katrina is in her role here now as interim deputy, clerk to the board, and just wanted to, just tell her great job during the meeting today, and just introduce her real quick to the board as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the support I've gotten.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you much. And I'm going to encourage everyone to have Samir come and speak before your boards. We have these meetings. Today it's 3 hours. It's packed full of information. I find it very difficult to go back in a succinct manner and explain to my board members what has happened. And because board comments are typically held to a couple of minutes, and we're on 4 or 5 different committees apiece. And this is one where I tell them, you're going to have to trust me, and I'll tell you offline, because you can't pack it all in. And that's exactly what you provided for my board members in 10 or 15 minutes. So great job. The single most important person in the whole room is always the clerk of the board for the flow of the meeting. You did a great job, Katrina. Of course, Adriana is sitting next to you, so that always helps, who was filling in. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Any other board comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this question is for our CEO, and it appears you're going to collaborate and make rounds to our county boards Are you open to cities or?
No, no, actually
No,
mentioned or meant to mention cities. In fact, in my mind, I said cities, but yeah, so it's cities and counties. And actually, Councilmember Lewis has been a major champion of not only having us, Jamie's actually been the person who's been doing that most recently, but not only for her city, but actually reaching out to all the fellow cities in Merced County to basically get a similar kind of an update. So she's already been, trailblazing in that with that respect. But yeah, so we're going to keep making those rounds, and I think if you see some opportunities for me to come in and speak and provide another, that's exactly what we're talking about doing. It's not just the counties, but also the cities as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
perfect.
I'd just like to say it's safe for me to go home. My air is good and my filter is at 89% life. More than me.
My filter never gets clogged because I have no hair. So that's great. Anything else? Any other jokes? Yes.
Sorry, that's a hard thing to follow up. At first I wasn't sure exactly what I signed up for, but I got to tell you, you make lemonade out of lemons, and I'm sold. So please come to Kings County. Thank you.
I love it. I appreciate those comments. All right. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, this meeting is adjourned at 12:05.
Thank you, Steph.